The night a silent housemaid spoke for the first time saved the most dangerous man in Phoenix and destroyed the only safety she'd ever known. 2 years of invisibility shattered in 3 words. 2 years of surviving by staying quiet, staying small, staying unnoticed in a mansion where the wrong glance could get you killed. But when Evelyn Cruz saw the wire beneath Adrian Voss's car, when she recognized the shape of death hiding in shadows she'd scrubbed clean 100 times before, silence stopped being survival. It became murder. And she'd already watched too many people die. What happens when the woman no one ever saw becomes the only person a killer can't stop watching? When the maid who cleaned up blood starts spilling it? When invisibility turns into the most dangerous visibility of all? Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this journey travels. Let's begin. The mansion didn't sleep. Evelyn had learned that her first week working there, back when she still flinched at every raised voice. When her hand shook so badly, she dropped a crystal decanter and spent 20 minutes on her knees picking glass out of imported carpet while waiting for someone to notice, to yell, to fire her, or worse. No one had noticed. That was when she understood the most important rule. In Adrian Voss's house, invisibility wasn't just an advantage. It was survival. 2 years later, her hands didn't shake anymore. She moved through the East Wing at 2:47 a.m. with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd mapped every creaking floorboard, every temperamental light switch, every camera angle in the security system. The hallway stretched long and dark, except for the ambient city glow bleeding through floor-to-ceiling windows. Phoenix sprawled below like a circuit board, all electric arteries and neon veins, beautiful in the way dangerous things often were. Evelyn's cart whispered across marble. Cleaning supplies, fresh linens, the kind of eco-friendly products rich people pretended to care about. She'd learned to stock the cart the way Adrian's previous housekeepers had. The ones who'd lasted 3 months, 6 months, one memorable woman who'd made it almost a year before she asked the wrong question about the wrong stain and disappeared so thoroughly, even the security footage seemed to forget she'd existed. The staff quarters were in the basement. Evelyn hadn't been down there in 11 months. She kept to herself, came in through the service entrance, did her work, left before dawn. The other employees, the chef, the driver, the 2 rotating security guards who worked the interior posts, they'd stopped trying to talk to her after the first few weeks. She was the ghost who cleaned up after ghosts. East Wing complete, she murmured, so quietly the words barely disturbed air. Talking to herself was the only conversation she had most days. 3rd floor next, then the main study if it's empty. The study was never empty before 3 a.m. Adrian Voss didn't sleep like normal people. He worked, he planned, he built his empire in the hours when other criminals were drunk or high or pretending their money made them invincible. Evelyn had seen him twice in 2 years. Once from a distance, crossing the courtyard toward his car. Once through a doorway, his back to her while he spoke on the phone in that low voice that made even innocent words sound like threats. She took the service stairs to the 3rd floor, each step placed with the careful precision of someone who'd learned to exist in negative space. The 3rd floor was mostly unused, guest rooms for visitors who never stayed long, a library no one read, a gym that saw occasional use from bodyguards who rotated through on weekly schedules. Evelyn cleaned them all. She was dusting the bookshelf in the library, working her way through leather-bound volumes that probably cost more than her entire year's salary when she heard voices below. The heating vent near her feet carried sound from the main foyer with crystal clarity. Another thing she'd learned early, that this house had ears everywhere if you knew where to listen. Don't care what Castellanos thinks. Adrian's voice, sharp with the kind of controlled anger that preceded violence. He made his choice when he moved product through the northern corridor. That's our territory. Has been for 6 years. He's claiming historical precedent. A second voice, male, careful. Marcus Webb, Adrian's head of security. Evelyn had learned the names by listening, by piecing together fragments of conversation like assembling a puzzle in the dark. Says his family controlled that route before your father's organization existed. My father's organization stopped existing when I inherited it and rebuilt it into something that actually works. A pause. Footsteps. Adrian was pacing. He always paced when he was working through a problem. Castellanos wants a war he can't win. The question is whether we give him a quick end or a slow one. Evelyn's hands kept moving, dusting, wiping, polishing. She'd learned early that freezing was more suspicious than motion. If someone walked in, she needed to look like she'd been working the whole time, like she hadn't heard a single word about territory disputes or implied murder. There's another factor. Marcus again, hesitant in the way people got when they had to deliver bad news to someone who killed the messenger as often as he thanked them. Castellanos has been in contact with the Salazar cartel. If they back his claim, then we remind them why they stayed out of Arizona in the first place. Adrian's voice dropped lower, colder. Set up a meeting, neutral ground. I'll handle Castellanos personally. The conversation faded as they moved toward the West Wing. Evelyn waited 30 seconds, counting heartbeats, then continued her work. Territory disputes. Cartel involvement. A meeting that would probably end with someone dead. None of her business. None of her concern. She was the invisible woman, the one who cleaned and left and never asked questions. She finished the library and moved to the guest rooms. The first 3 were exactly as she'd left them 4 days ago. Beds made with hospital corners, surfaces dust-free, closets empty except for spare hangers. The 4th room stopped her. The window was open. Just an inch, maybe less, but enough to let in the cold November air. Enough to set off alarm bells in her head that had nothing to do with cleaning protocols. Evelyn approached slowly. The window faced the interior courtyard where Adrian's personal vehicles were kept. From this angle, she could see the matte black SUV he used for most business meetings, the silver sports car he drove when he wanted to remind people he was young and rich and untouchable, the armored sedan that came out for high-risk situations. Something wasn't right. She couldn't have explained it if someone had held a gun to her head. Nothing looked obviously wrong. The vehicles sat in their assigned spaces, the courtyard lights glowed with their usual amber warmth, the fountain in the center splashed quietly. But her instincts, the same instincts that had kept her alive through medical school poverty, through her father's debts to the kind of people who collected in blood, through 2 years of working in a house where asking the wrong question could get you killed, those instincts screamed that something was very, very wrong. Evelyn set down her cleaning supplies and moved to the window, opened it wider, just enough to lean out and get a better view. The sports car. Something about the sports car. She squinted, letting her eyes adjust to the interplay of shadow and light. There, beneath the chassis, where the courtyard lights didn't quite reach. A shape that didn't belong. Small, rectangular, definitely not part of the car's original design. Her blood turned to ice water. She'd seen something like that before. Years ago, during her brief, disastrous semester of pre-med clinics in a neighborhood where gang violence sent more patients to the ER than disease. One of the trauma surgeons had pulled her aside after a particularly bad case, a teenager who'd survived a car explosion that killed his 3 friends. The surgeon had shown her photographs, explained the mechanisms, warned her about the kinds of attachments people used when they wanted death to look like an accident. That shape under the sports car looked exactly like those photographs. Evelyn's mind raced. Protocol said she should report this to security. Call Marcus, let him handle it, go back to being invisible. But the window being open meant someone had been in this room, someone who shouldn't have been, someone who'd needed a vantage point to what? Make sure the device was properly placed, confirm the target's vehicle. If she called security, how long before they responded? How long before they checked the car, found the device? If they even believed her in the first place? The invisible housemaid claiming there was a bomb? They'd think she was crazy, or worse, they'd think she was involved. And Adrian was downstairs right now, probably heading toward those vehicles within the hour. 2 years of silence. 2 years of the safety that came from being nobody, nothing, a ghost who cleaned and disappeared. Speaking up meant visibility. Visibility meant questions. Questions meant background checks. And background checks meant someone would eventually trace her back to the debts, to her father, to the reason she'd taken a job in a crime lord's mansion instead of finishing medical school. Visibility meant danger, but silence meant watching someone die. Evelyn closed the window and ran. She took the service stairs 3 at a time, her heart hammering against her ribs hard enough to hurt. The main foyer was empty when she reached it. Adrian and Marcus must have moved to the West Wing offices. She could hear voices in the distance, muffled by walls and doors and the vast space that separated the help from the helped. She followed the voices. The West Wing was off limits to cleaning staff before 4 a.m. Another rule, another boundary she'd never crossed. But the voices were getting louder as someone approached, and if she waited, if she hesitated even a second longer, two men rounded the corner. Marcus Webb, 6'3", and built like he'd learned violence before he'd learned language. And Adrian Voss. Evelyn had seen him from a distance, but distance was a mercy. Up close, Adrian Voss was the kind of beautiful that came with warning labels. Sharp cheekbones, dark haircut with expensive precision, eyes that were probably brown but looked black in the hallway's ambient light. He wore a suit that cost more than her car, the car she'd sold 8 months ago when the insurance got too expensive. And he moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd never questioned whether the world would bend to accommodate him. Both men stopped when they saw her. Marcus's hand moved toward his jacket, toward the gun Evelyn knew he carried. Adrian just stared, his expression shifting from surprise to something harder, more calculating. "Who the hell—" Marcus started. "Your car," Evelyn interrupted, her voice coming out stronger than she'd expected. 2 years of silence and her first words to Adrian Voss were about murder. "The sports car in the courtyard. Don't go near it." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? There's a device under the chassis. I saw it from the third-floor window." She was talking too fast, words tumbling over each other. "Someone left the window open in the east guest room, the one with the courtyard view. They needed line of sight to confirm placement. The device, it looks like an explosive." Marcus's gun was out now, not pointed at her, but definitely not pointed away. "And how exactly would you know what an explosive looks like?" "I was pre-med, trauma rotation. I've seen what car bombs do to people." She kept her eyes on Adrian, ignoring the weapon. "The window is open. That room is never used. Someone was in there tonight." Adrian held up a hand and Marcus halted, though the gun stayed out. "Your name?" "Evelyn Cruz. I work here. Housekeeping." Something flickered across Adrian's face. Surprise, maybe, that she existed at all. "How long?" 2 years. 2 years. He repeated it like he was testing the words, seeing if they made sense. "And in 2 years you've never spoken to me before. You've never been about to walk into a car bomb before." The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "Marcus, check the courtyard cameras. Show me the East Wing guest room feed from tonight." Marcus pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. 20 seconds of silence that felt like an hour. Then his expression changed. Got movement. Third floor east, room 4. Timeline matches. Someone came in through the window at 1:43 a.m., left at 1:51. And the courtyard? More typing. Marcus's jaw tightened. Visuals partially blocked by the fountain angle, but yeah, someone was under the sports car, 2 minutes, maybe less. Adrian's attention came back to Evelyn like a physical weight. "You're certain about what you saw?" It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Yes." "Marcus, get Rico and Santos, sweep the entire property. I want every vehicle checked, every room cleared, every entry point locked down." He paused. "And get bomb disposal here. Quietly." Marcus left at a near run, phone already at his ear. Evelyn and Adrian stood in the hallway, alone except for the weight of what she'd just done. She'd spoken. She'd been seen. 2 years of carefully constructed invisibility had just shattered, and she had no idea what came next. "You saved my life," Adrian said quietly. "Maybe, if I'm right." "You're right." He said it with absolute certainty. "Your instincts are good. The question is why you're working as a housemaid when you have medical training." And there it was. The question she'd spent 2 years avoiding. "That's personal," Evelyn said. "Everything in my house is personal." But he didn't push. Instead, he gestured down the hallway. "Come with me. You're not going back to cleaning tonight." "I haven't finished." "Evelyn," he said her name like he was memorizing it. "Someone just tried to kill me, and you're the only person who noticed. That makes you either very valuable or very dangerous. Until I know which, you stay where I can see you." It wasn't a request. They walked in silence to the West Wing offices, a space Evelyn had only ever seen from doorways during her pre-dawn cleaning routes. Rich wood paneling, leather furniture, the kind of abstract art that cost 6 figures and looked like someone had spilled paint and called it genius. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, Phoenix spreading out like a promise or a threat depending on where you stood in its hierarchy. Adrian moved to the windows, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed in a way that somehow made him seem more dangerous, not less. "Tell me what you saw. Everything." So she did. The open window, the shape beneath the car, the timeline that suggested someone had needed visual confirmation. She kept her voice clinical, detached, the way she'd learned to present case studies in medical school. Just facts, no emotion, nothing that would make her seem unstable or unreliable. When she finished, Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "You're observant," he finally said. "I'm a housemaid. Noticing things is the job." "No, your job is cleaning. Noticing things, actually seeing them, understanding what they mean, that's something else entirely." He turned from the window. "Most people look without seeing. They're so focused on their own concerns, their own small worlds, that they miss everything happening around them. You don't." "I've had practice." "At being invisible?" The accuracy of it hit harder than she'd expected. "At surviving." "Who are you running from?" The question came so casually she almost answered before her brain caught up. "I'm not Evelyn." Her name again, but different this time, gentler. "You're working under the table for a criminal organization, which means you don't want your name in any official systems. You have medical training, but you're scrubbing floors at 3 a.m. instead of working in a hospital. You've spent 2 years being so invisible that I, someone who knows everything that happens in this house, didn't know you existed." He paused. "That's not someone running towards something. That's someone running away." She wanted to lie. 2 years of practice at silence, at deflection, at being nothing. But something about the way Adrian was looking at her, not suspicious, not threatening, just genuinely curious, made the truth slip out before she could stop it. "My father owed money to the wrong people. A lot of money. When he couldn't pay, they came for me instead." "What happened to him?" "He died. Heart attack. Very convenient timing for everyone except me and the debt." Adrian's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. "The debt transferred to you." "His creditors seemed to think so. I disagreed. They disagreed with my disagreement." She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the room's perfect climate control. "I had a semester left of medical school, full scholarship, good grades, a residency basically waiting for me. And then suddenly I was choosing between finishing my degree or staying alive. So you disappeared. I got smart about it, changed my name, legally, through a lawyer who didn't ask questions, paid cash for everything, took jobs that didn't require background checks or tax documentation. Your previous housekeeper mentioned this position to me before she left, said it paid well and asked no questions. And you've been here 2 years, cleaning up after criminals, staying invisible." Adrian moved closer, not threatening, but deliberate. "That must have been lonely." "Lonely is better than dead." "Is it?" The question caught her off guard. She'd spent 2 years telling herself that exact thing, that invisibility was worth it, that silence was survival, that being nobody was better than being hunted. But hearing it reflected back as a question made her realize how much she'd given up. Not just medical school, not just her name and her future, but the basic human experience of being seen, of mattering, of existing as something more than negative space. "I don't know," she admitted. Before Adrian could respond, Marcus burst back into the room. His expression said everything. "Found it," he said grimly. "C4, wireless detonator, professional setup. Bomb squad's disarming it now, but..." He glanced at Evelyn. "She was right. You'd have been dead before you reached the city limits." Adrian nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving Evelyn's face. "Who knew I was taking the sports car tonight? Just inner circle, me, Rico, Santos, and whoever's handling the Castellanos meeting logistics. Which means we have a leak." "Looks that way." "Find it. I don't care how long it takes or what you have to do. Someone in my organization just tried to kill me, and I want to know who before sunrise." Marcus left again, already barking orders into his phone. The silence that followed felt different than before, heavier, charged with something Evelyn couldn't quite name. "You should go home," Adrian said finally. "Get some rest. Come back tomorrow. Later today, I mean, at a normal hour. We need to talk about your future here." "My future?" "You saved my life. That's not something I take lightly." He moved to his desk, pulled out a business card, wrote something on the back. My personal number. If you remember anything else, if you see anything unusual, if you need anything at all, call me. Evelyn took the card like it might explode. I'm just a housemaid. No, Adrian said quietly. You're not. You never were. You were just pretending to be, and you're very good at pretending. But tonight you stopped pretending long enough to save my life, which means I owe you. And I always pay my debts. You don't owe me anything. I did what anyone would do. No, you did what almost no one would do. You saw something wrong, and you spoke up, even though speaking up put you at risk, even though it destroyed the invisibility that kept you safe. He paused. That kind of courage is rare, especially in my world. Evelyn had no idea what to say to that. Adrian seemed to sense her discomfort. Go home. We'll talk later. She nodded, turned to leave, then stopped at the doorway. Sir? Adrian. Just Adrian. Adrian. His name felt strange in her mouth. Who do you think did this? I have enemies. Lots of them. Could be Castellanos, could be the Salazar cartel, could be someone I haven't even thought of yet. He smiled, and it was the saddest expression she'd ever seen. That's the problem with building an empire on fear. Eventually, someone decides they're more afraid of what you might do than what you definitely will do. Evelyn thought about that all the way home. Home was a studio apartment in a neighborhood where car alarms were background noise, and the police only came when someone was already dead. She'd chosen it specifically for its anonymity, a building where no one knew their neighbors, where the super took cash and didn't ask for references, where she could disappear into the urban landscape like water into sand. She made it inside, locked the 3 deadbolts she'd installed herself, and sat down on her second-hand couch without bothering to turn on the lights. 2 years. 2 years of silence, of invisibility, of safety through insignificance. All of it gone because she'd seen something wrong and couldn't stay quiet. But Adrian was alive. Whatever else happened, whatever consequences came from tonight, she'd saved someone's life. That had to count for something. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then she remembered the card in her pocket and Adrian's handwriting on the back. Hello. It's Adrian. His voice sounded different on the phone, more human somehow, less like a crime lord and more like just a person. I wanted to make sure you made it home safely. I did. Thank you for... She stopped. Why are you calling me? Because someone tried to kill me tonight. And the person who saved me is currently sitting in an apartment in a bad neighborhood with locks that probably wouldn't stop a determined teenager, let alone a professional killer who might be wondering how I knew about the bomb. Ice slid down her spine. You think they'll come after me? I think if our leak knows you're the one who warned me, you become a target. Which is why I'm sending security to watch your building tonight, just as a precaution. I don't need... Evelyn. That gentle tone again. The one that made her want to trust him, even though trusting criminals was how her father had ended up dead. You saved my life. Let me return the favor. She looked at her deadbolts, at her dark studio, at the life she'd built from necessity and fear. Okay, good. Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be complicated. He hung up before she could ask what that meant. Evelyn didn't sleep. She sat on her couch watching the street through her window, and sure enough, 20 minutes later, a black SUV parked across from her building. She couldn't see the driver, but she knew they were there. Watching, protecting. For the first time in 2 years, she felt something other than afraid. It didn't last. The sun was just starting to paint Phoenix in shades of orange and gold when her phone rang again. Adrian's number. Turn on the news, he said without preamble. She grabbed her laptop, pulled up a local news site. The headline made her stomach drop. Phoenix crime lord found dead in apparent car explosion. Below it, a photo. Not Adrian. Someone else. Younger, crueler looking, and very, very dead. Castellanos, Adrian said quietly. Someone blew up his car early this morning. Same setup as mine. C4, wireless detonator, professional work. But you stopped yours. You knew to check. Exactly. Which means whoever did this wanted me to know it was meant to be synchronized. Both of us, same night, same method. A pause. This isn't about territory or money or power. This is about sending a message. What message? That there's a new player in town. And they're declaring war on everyone. Evelyn's mouth went dry. What do I do? You come back to the mansion. Right now. That security detail outside your apartment? They're going to drive you here. Pack a bag. Enough for a few days. Why? Because, Adrian said, and for the first time since she'd met him, she heard actual fear in his voice. Whoever did this is smart enough to hit two targets simultaneously, professional enough to build identical explosives, and bold enough to declare war on both major organizations in Phoenix. That kind of enemy doesn't leave loose ends. I'm a loose end. You're the person who saw what everyone else missed, which makes you either a threat they need to eliminate or an asset they might want to acquire. A beat of silence. I'm not giving them the chance to make that choice. You're under my protection now. I didn't ask for... You didn't ask to see a bomb either. But you did, and you spoke up, and now we're both dealing with the consequences. His voice softened. I know you've spent 2 years running from danger. I'm asking you to run towards safety instead. My safety. Please. The word please from a crime lord felt like the strangest thing she'd heard in months. Okay, Evelyn whispered. Good. Security will be at your door in 3 minutes. Pack light, move fast. She packed lighter than he probably meant. Clothes, toiletries, her laptop, the 3 medical textbooks she'd kept from school because she couldn't bear to sell them. Everything fit in one duffel bag. 2 years of invisible living had taught her to travel light, to own nothing that couldn't be abandoned at a moment's notice. The knock came exactly 3 minutes later. 2 men, professional and silent, who escorted her to the SUV like she was something precious instead of something disposable. She recognized the driver from the mansion, Rico, Marcus's second. He nodded at her in the rearview mirror. Good morning, Miss Cruz. Evelyn? Just Evelyn. Adrian says you're staying at the house for a while. Guest wing's being prepared. Guest wing. Not the basement staff quarters. Not invisible anymore. The drive back to this mansion felt surreal. Phoenix was waking up, people starting their normal days, going to normal jobs, worrying about normal things like traffic and coffee, and whether they'd remembered to pay the electric bill. None of them knew that 2 crime lords had nearly died last night, that a war was starting, that the invisible housemaid in the SUV had somehow ended up at the center of it all. The mansion looked different in daylight, less imposing, more beautiful. Mediterranean architecture, sprawling grounds, the kind of place that appeared in luxury magazines with captions about architectural excellence and stunning desert vistas. It had never occurred to Evelyn to think of it as beautiful before. It had just been the place where she worked, where she survived, where she stayed invisible. Marcus met them at the door. Miss Cruz, come with me. He led her through hallways she'd only ever cleaned, past rooms she'd only ever seen empty, to the East Wing guest quarters. The same floor where she'd seen the open window. The same hall she'd run down to warn Adrian. This is yours for now, Marcus said, opening a door to a suite that was bigger than her entire apartment. Private bathroom, sitting area, balcony overlooking the gardens. Kitchen staff will bring meals unless you want to come down to the dining room. Security is on this floor 24/7. I don't need all this. Adrian disagrees. Marcus's expression was hard to read. You saved his life. In this world, that means something, especially to him. Why especially to him? Because not many people try to save Adrian Voss. Most either want him dead or want something from him. You're the first person in years who did something for him without expecting anything in return. Evelyn thought about that after Marcus left. She unpacked her single duffel bag into a walk-in closet that could have held 50 times her wardrobe. Stood in the bathroom, marble counters, rainfall shower, heated floors, and wondered what version of herself had ended up here. Not the medical student, not the invisible maid. Someone new. Someone caught between worlds. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Come in. Adrian entered, and somehow the massive suite suddenly felt smaller. He'd changed clothes since last night. Different suit, same expensive precision. But he looked tired. Human. Like someone who'd been up all night dealing with murder and war and the reality that his life had nearly ended. You settling in okay? He asked. This is too much. It's the smallest guest suite we have. That's not what I meant. Adrian smiled slightly. I know, but you're here now, and you're safe, and we need to talk about what happens next. What happens next is I go back to being invisible, and you forget I exist. Can't do that. Why not? Because you're not invisible anymore. The moment you warned me about that bomb, you became visible, relevant, a person who matters. He moved closer. And in my world, people who matter become targets. I need you somewhere I can protect you. For how long? Until we figure out who's trying to start a war and why. Until the threat is neutralized. He paused. Or until you decide you want to leave, in which case I'll make sure you have the resources to disappear properly. New identity, new city, enough money to finish medical school wherever you want. Evelyn's breath caught. Why would you do that? Because you saved my life. Because you deserve better than cleaning floors and hiding from debt collectors. Because... He seemed to struggle with the words. Because I've spent years surrounded by people who want something from me. Money, power, protection, revenge. You're the first person in longer than I can remember who just did the right thing because it was right. That's worth protecting. She wanted to argue. Wanted to say she wasn't special, wasn't worth this kind of attention, wasn't anything except someone who'd gotten lucky and seen something she shouldn't have. But the way Adrian was looking at her made the words die in her throat. Okay, she said instead. Okay, you'll stay? Okay, I'll stay until this is over. Then we talk about what comes next. Adrian's smile was genuine this time. Fair enough. In the meantime, I have a favor to ask. What kind of favor? The kind that uses your real skills instead of wasting them on cleaning. He gestured to the sitting area. Come on, I'll explain. They sat in chairs that cost more than a car, looking out floor-to-ceiling windows at gardens Evelyn had only ever seen from the outside. Adrian pulled out a tablet, brought up photographs and files and documents that probably should have been classified. This is what we know, he said. Someone coordinated simultaneous attacks on both me and Castellanos. Same explosive type, same detonator setup, same professional execution. The bomb squad says the devices were built by someone with military training, not just someone who watched YouTube videos. So military or ex-military? Exactly, which narrows the field. There aren't that many people in Phoenix with both the skills and the connections to pull this off. He swiped to another screen. But here's what's interesting. Castellanos' organization has been in chaos since his death. Power vacuum, lieutenants fighting over territory, alliances fracturing. Within 6 hours, 3 different factions have already emerged, each claiming leadership. You're not in chaos, because I'm not dead. But whoever planned this expected me to be. Adrian met her eyes. They expected both organizations to collapse. Chaos on both sides, territory up for grabs, power consolidating in the confusion, classic hostile takeover strategy. Evelyn's mind raced. So this isn't about revenge or territory disputes. It's about eliminating the current leadership so someone new can take control. Someone new. Someone organized enough to coordinate simultaneous attacks. Someone patient enough to wait for the right moment. He paused. Someone who knew exactly which cars we'd be using that night. The leak. The leak. Which is why I need your help. I'm not a detective. I'm not even technically a maid anymore. What could I possibly... You see things other people miss, Adrian interrupted. You notice details, patterns, things that don't fit. That's exactly what I need right now. Someone who can look at my organization with fresh eyes and spot what everyone else is blind to. You want me to find your leak? I want you to help me understand what's happening. The leak, yes, but also the bigger picture. Who benefits from both me and Castellanos dying? Who has the resources and connections to coordinate something this sophisticated? Who's been positioning themselves to take advantage of the chaos? Evelyn thought about it. About spending 2 years invisible, watching and listening and piecing together information no one else thought mattered. About the skills she'd learned in medical school, pattern recognition, diagnostic thinking, seeing how small symptoms connected to larger problems. If I do this, she said slowly, I need complete access. To your files, your operations, your people. No secrets, no sanitized versions. I need to see everything the way it actually is. Done. And if I find something you don't like, if the leak is someone you trust, someone important, you don't shoot the messenger. I give you my word. The word of a crime lord. The word of someone whose life you saved. Adrian extended his hand. Do we have a deal? Evelyn looked at his hand. 2 years ago, she'd have run from this moment. from visibility, from involvement, from anything that pulled her out of the safety of insignificance. But 2 years ago, she'd also been running from debt collectors who saw her as nothing more than leverage. Now she was sitting in a mansion, being offered a chance to use her brain instead of just her hands, to matter instead of just existing. She shook his hand. "We have a deal." "Good." Adrian's smile was sharp, dangerous, the expression of someone who just gained an unexpected advantage. "Then let's figure out who's trying to start a war, and let's make sure they regret it." For the first time since her father died, since her life collapsed, since she'd chosen invisibility over existence, Evelyn Cruz felt something she'd almost forgotten: purpose. The sun climbed higher over Phoenix, painting the city in shades of gold and shadow. Somewhere out there, someone was planning their next move. Someone who'd tried to kill 2 crime lords and nearly succeeded. Someone who thought they could reshape the criminal underworld through fire and blood. They hadn't counted on the invisible woman who saw everything. That, Evelyn thought, was going to be their first mistake. And in Adrian Voss's world, first mistakes were usually fatal. The conference room Adrian led her to 3 hours later looked like it belonged in a corporate headquarters, not a crime lord's mansion. Sleek table, ergonomic chairs, multiple screens mounted on the walls displaying real-time data feeds. The only hints of its true purpose were the reinforced door and the complete absence of windows. Marcus was already there, along with 3 other people Evelyn didn't recognize. They all stopped talking when she walked in. "Everyone, this is Evelyn Cruz," Adrian said, his hand resting lightly on her back, a gesture that felt protective and possessive at the same time. "She's consulting on security matters. Anything you say in front of me, you can say in front of her." The silence that followed had weight. One of the men, older, graying at the temples, expensive watch, spoke first. "With all due respect, boss, we don't know her. Yesterday she was scrubbing toilets, today she's in strategy meetings? That's a hell of a promotion. Yesterday she saved my life, Vincent. Today I'm returning the favor by trusting her judgment." Adrian's tone didn't change, but something in the room shifted. "Anyone have a problem with that?" No one answered. "Good. Sit down, all of you. We have work to do." Evelyn took a seat between Adrian and Marcus, acutely aware of the eyes on her. The man who'd spoken, Vincent, looked like he'd stepped out of a banking commercial. The woman across from him was younger, severe, with the kind of posture that suggested military training. The third person, barely out of his 20s, had the nervous energy of someone who'd learned to survive by being smarter than everyone else. Adrian pulled up a map of Phoenix on the main screen. Red dots marked locations across the city, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. "This is what we control," he said, "directly or through partnerships. Distribution networks, protection agreements, revenue streams. Everything highlighted in red falls under our organization's influence." He tapped the tablet and blue dots appeared, fewer but strategically placed. This was Castellanos' territory, past tense, because as of 6 hours ago, his organization no longer exists as a unified entity. His 3 top lieutenants are currently fighting over the remains. "Which creates opportunity," Vincent said. "Which creates chaos," Adrian corrected. "Chaos is only useful if you're the one controlling it. Right now, we're not. Someone else is." He brought up a third layer, green dots scattered across both red and blue zones. "These are incidents from the last 72 hours, unusual activity, armed confrontations that don't fit existing territory disputes, supply chain disruptions, information leaks. Small things individually, but collectively they form a pattern." Evelyn studied the screen. The green dots weren't random. They clustered around specific intersections between red and blue territory, places where both organizations had competing interests. "They're testing boundaries," she said quietly. Everyone looked at her. "The green incidents," she continued, gaining confidence, "they're not random violence. They're probing attacks. Whoever's behind this is trying to figure out where your defenses are weakest, where Castellanos' former territory is most vulnerable. They're mapping the landscape before they make their real move." The young nervous one, Adrian introduced him as Daniel, head of intelligence, nodded enthusiastically. "That matches what we're seeing in the digital space. Increased surveillance on our communications, attempts to compromise encrypted channels, targeted phishing against key personnel." "How targeted?" Adrian asked. "Very. They know our organizational structure. They know who reports to who handles what operations, who has access to sensitive information." Daniel pulled up a network diagram. This is our communication tree. And these, he highlighted specific nodes, are the people who've been targeted in the last week. Evelyn scanned the highlighted names. There was a pattern there too, but she couldn't quite see it yet. Something about the selection process, about which people had been chosen and which hadn't. Can I see personnel files, she asked, for everyone highlighted? Daniel glanced at Adrian, who nodded. 5 minutes later, Evelyn had a dozen dossiers open on the tablet in front of her. She read quickly, looking for the thing her instincts told her was there. They all have something in common, she said finally. These 6 people, they all have connections outside your organization. Family members who work for competitors, ex-partners in rival operations, financial ties to other criminal enterprises. They're not necessarily disloyal, but they have vulnerabilities, pressure points. Marcus leaned forward. You're saying whoever's doing this is planning to use these people as leverage or as information sources? You don't need a mole if you can pressure someone into becoming one. Evelyn looked at Adrian. Has anyone approached these individuals, offered deals, made threats, anything unusual? Not that we know of, Vincent said, but that doesn't mean it hasn't happened. People don't always report when they're being squeezed. Then we need to ask them, directly. Adrian's expression had gone cold, calculating. Marcus, bring them in. One at a time, quiet, no alarms. I want to know everything. Who's contacted them, what's been offered, what they're afraid of. And if one of them is the leak, the military woman, Sarah, Adrian's logistics coordinator, asked, then we deal with it. But Evelyn's right. Vulnerability doesn't equal betrayal. We figure out who's being pressured before we start making assumptions about loyalty. The meeting continued for another hour, covering everything from supply chain security to communication protocols to contingency plans if the situation escalated. Evelyn listened more than she spoke, absorbing information, watching how these people interacted. Vincent was ambitious, territorial about his role as Adrian's financial advisor. Sarah was competent but detached, the kind of person who'd follow orders even if she disagreed with them. Daniel was brilliant and knew it, eager to prove his worth. And Marcus was the true believer, the one who'd follow Adrian into hell without question. It was fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. When the meeting finally broke up, Adrian caught her arm. Walk with me. They went out to the gardens, taking a path that wound through carefully manicured landscaping toward a gazebo overlooking the desert beyond the property walls. The afternoon sun was brutal, the kind of dry heat that made Phoenix feel like the surface of another planet. You did well in there, Adrian said. I pointed out the obvious. You pointed out what no one else saw. That's not the same thing. He sat on the gazebo bench, gestured for her to join him. Vincent's been with me for 8 years, Daniel for 3, Sarah for 5. They're smart, experienced, good at what they do, but none of them made the connection you made in 5 minutes. They're too close to it. Sometimes distance gives you clarity. Is that what 2 years of invisibility taught you? How to see clearly? Evelyn thought about that. Maybe. Or maybe I just got good at noticing things because not noticing meant ending up dead. Your father's debt collectors. They were creative about motivation. She kept her voice flat, factual. Turns out when you owe people money you can't pay, they find all sorts of ways to encourage you to be more resourceful. How much did he owe? Does it matter? It might, if you're still running from them. Evelyn shook her head. They lost interest after he died. Turns out a dead debtor and his broke daughter aren't worth the effort of collection. They wrote it off, moved on to easier targets. But you kept running anyway. I kept being careful. There's a difference. She looked out at the desert, at the vast empty spaces that surrounded this pocket of wealth and cultivation. You build a life around fear for long enough, you forget what it's like to live any other way. Adrian was quiet for a moment. I know that feeling. Do you? She turned to face him. You run a criminal empire. You have money, power, people who jump when you say jump. What do you have to be afraid of? Everything. The word came out soft, almost vulnerable. Every decision I make, someone lives or dies. Every alliance I form, I create a potential enemy. Every person I trust could be the one who puts a bullet in my head. He met her eyes. I've been running this organization since I was 23. 15 years of looking over my shoulder, of sleeping light, of assuming everyone wants something from me because everyone does. You think that's not fear? Then why do it? Because my father built this empire on blood and terror, and when he died, I inherited a war machine that would have torn itself apart without someone to control it. I could have walked away, let it collapse, let Phoenix descend into the kind of violence that makes the evening news for weeks. He paused. Or I could take the monster he created and turn it into something that at least had rules, structure, limits. A kinder, gentler crime syndicate? A smarter one that doesn't murder civilians, doesn't deal in human trafficking, doesn't target kids. One that operates like a business instead of a cult. Adrian's laugh was bitter. I know how that sounds. I'm still a criminal. People still die because of decisions I make. But at least now they die for reasons, not random violence. Evelyn didn't know what to say to that. The justification was both logical and horrifying, the kind of moral calculus that only made sense when you were already so deep in darkness that distinctions between shades of black seem meaningful. Why are you telling me this? She asked instead. Because you're going to be looking into my organization, into my people, into everything I've built. And I want you to understand what you're protecting, not just me, the structure, the system that keeps Phoenix from becoming a war zone. And if I find something you don't like, if the leak is someone important, someone you trust, then we deal with it, together. He stood, offered her his hand. Come on, I want to show you something. They walked back to the mansion, taking a different path that led to the west wing. Adrian used a keycard to open a door Evelyn had never seen unlocked, revealing a staircase leading down. Private access to the secure level, he explained. Only a handful of people have clearance. The basement was nothing like the staff quarters where Evelyn had never spent time. This was a bunker. Reinforced walls, climate control, server rooms humming with electronic life. Adrian led her past all of it to a vault door that required both a keycard and a biometric scan. Inside was an office that looked like a war room. Multiple screens, physical files, and locked cabinets. A map table with the kind of detailed tactical overlays Evelyn had only seen in military documentaries. This is where I actually work, Adrian said. Everything upstairs is for show, for meetings with people who need to think they're seen behind the curtain. This is the real thing. He pulled up files on the main screen, personnel records, financial transactions, surveillance footage. I'm giving you access to everything, all of it. No filters, no sanitized versions. You want to know who works for me, how we operate, where the money comes from? It's all here. Evelyn felt the weight of that trust like a physical thing. Why? Because someone is trying to destroy what I've built, and I need someone I can actually trust to help me stop them. Someone who doesn't have a stake in the existing power structure, who isn't protecting their own position or agenda. He moved closer. You're the only person in my world right now who doesn't want anything from me except to stay alive. That makes you more valuable than you realize. I could betray you. Take all this information and sell it to your enemies. You could, but you won't. How do you know? Because you've spent 2 years watching criminals operate, and you never once tried to leverage that information for your own benefit. You just kept your head down and survived. Adrian's smile was sad. You're a good person, Evelyn, even if you don't believe it. Before she could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway. His expression said everything. We have a problem, he said. They followed him back upstairs to a sitting room where one of the targeted employees, a woman named Rachel who handled distribution logistics, sat crying. Her hands shook as she held a phone, screen lit with a photograph that made Evelyn's stomach turn. The photo showed a little girl, maybe 7 years old, walking out of an elementary school. Red crosshairs were digitally superimposed over her face. They sent it this morning, Rachel said through tears. No message, just the photo. And then an hour later, a call. Man's voice, distorted, said if I didn't cooperate, my daughter would disappear on her way home from school. Adrian's expression went absolutely flat. What do they want? Information, real-time updates on your movements, security protocols, upcoming meetings. They want me to install monitoring software on the internal network. She looked up at him, terrified. I didn't do it. I swear I didn't. But they have my daughter's schedule, her school, her after-school program. They know everything. Where is she now? With my mother. I pulled her from school, said she was sick, but I can't keep her hidden forever. Adrian pulled out his phone, made a call. Vincent, I need a secure location for a civilian protective detail. High priority. He listened for a moment. Good. Have the team ready in 20 minutes. He hung up, turned back to Rachel. We're moving your daughter and your mother to a safe house. Full security, rotating guards, everything. They won't be able to touch her. And when they realize I'm not cooperating, then we make sure they understand that threatening children is a line they don't get to cross. The cold fury in Adrian's voice made Evelyn's skin prickle. How many others received similar threats? I don't know. I've been too scared to ask. Marcus, check the other 5 targeted individuals. Find out if they've been contacted. Adrian looked at Evelyn. This changes things. They're not just mapping our defenses. They're actively trying to compromise our people. Which means they're getting ready to move, Evelyn said. You don't go through this much effort to gather intelligence unless you're planning something big. Agreed, Daniel. The young analyst appeared within seconds. I need full surveillance on anyone connected to Rachel's daughter. School, teachers, neighbors, parents of other students. If someone's been watching her, they left a trail. On it. The next several hours were chaos. 2 more of the targeted employees came forward with similar stories. Threats against family members, demands for information, promises of violence if they didn't cooperate. None of them had given in yet, but the fear was palpable. These weren't hardened criminals. They were logistics coordinators, financial analysts, IT specialists. People who'd taken jobs with Adrian's organization because it paid well, not because they wanted to live in constant danger. By evening, all 3 threatened families were in protective custody. Daniel had identified a pattern in the surveillance. The same rental van appearing near multiple targets' homes over the last week, always with stolen plates. Sarah had locked down security protocols across the entire organization, and Vincent had frozen certain financial accounts as a precaution against infiltration. Evelyn spent most of that time in the war room, going through personnel files and operational records, looking for the pattern she knew had to be there. Someone was feeding information to the attackers, someone with access to employee records, family details, security schedules. The leak wasn't just one person being pressured, it was someone actively helping. She found it just after midnight. Adrian? Her voice cut through the low conversation he was having with Marcus. I need you to look at something. He came over immediately. She pulled up 2 sets of files side by side. This is the personnel information for the 3 employees who were threatened. Home addresses, family details, work schedules. All of it is in our system, yes? Yes, standard HR records. Now look at the timing. She highlighted specific access logs. Someone viewed all 3 files within a 2-hour window, 3 days before the first threat was made. Same user account, same access point. Adrian leaned closer. Whose account? That's the interesting part. The account belongs to someone who shouldn't have access to HR records at all. She brought up the user profile. This is a maintenance account, used for system updates and routine IT work, except the access pattern doesn't match maintenance activity. It's targeted, specific. Someone's using a compromised account to avoid detection, Marcus said, or someone in IT is the leak. Evelyn pulled up more logs. Look at the broader pattern. This account has been used to access sensitive files for the last 3 months. Financial records, security protocols, operational plans. Someone's been systematically gathering intelligence, and they've been smart enough to use an account that wouldn't raise red flags. Who has access to maintenance accounts? Adrian's voice was very quiet. Daniel appeared, already pulling up the information. 3 people. Head of IT, senior systems administrator, and... He stopped, his face going pale. Me. I have administrative access to all system accounts. The room went silent. I didn't... Daniel started. I know, Adrian interrupted. If you were the leak, you wouldn't have given yourself obvious access. You'd have used someone else's credentials. He turned to Evelyn. Can you trace the physical access point? Figure out where these searches originated? She worked through the logs, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Medical school had required basic data analysis skills, and 2 years of observing patterns had made her better at seeing connections. The access points were all over the place, different computers, different locations within the network, but there was one constant. They all route through the same network node, she said. Server room 3, junction box 7A. Whoever's doing this has physical access to that location. That's the West Wing basement server room, Daniel said. Restricted access, keycard entry only. Pull the logs for that room. Every entry in the last 3 months. It took 10 minutes. When the results came up, Evelyn felt her stomach drop. The access pattern was perfect. Too perfect. Regular intervals, normal business hours. Exactly the kind of routine that wouldn't attract attention. Except one name appeared more frequently than anyone else. At times that didn't match their supposed work schedule. Vincent Castellano. The surname hit like a physical blow. "Please tell me that's a coincidence," Marcus said. Adrian's expression had gone absolutely cold. "Vincent? My financial advisor, Vincent? Check his full background," Evelyn said quietly. "Family connections, previous employment, everything." Daniel worked in silence. The results came up on screen and Evelyn watched Adrian's face as he read them. Vincent Castellano, cousin to Javier Castellanos, the crime lord who died in the car bombing. Estranged from the family for 15 years after a dispute over inheritance. Changed his name legally, buried the connection under layers of corporate paperwork and false documentation. And he'd been working for Adrian for 8 years. "He's been here since the beginning," Adrian said softly. "Since I took over from my father, I trusted him with everything." "He had motive," Evelyn said. "His cousin dies, creating chaos in both organizations. If he's been feeding intelligence to a third party, they could use that chaos to move in, take control, and Vincent would be positioned perfectly to benefit from the transition. Or to settle old family grudges," Marcus added. "Maybe this was never about a third party. Maybe Vincent wanted both you and his cousin dead, wanted to watch the empires tear each other apart." "Where is he now?" Adrian's voice had no emotion in it at all. "Home, as far as I know. We can bring him in." "No," Adrian stood. "If we move against him directly, we show our hand. He'll run, or worse, trigger whatever endgame he has planned." He looked at Evelyn. "How certain are you about this?" "The data doesn't lie. Someone with administrative access has been stealing information for months. The access pattern matches Vincent's movements, and the family connection to Castellanos is too significant to ignore." She paused. "But I can't prove intent. Maybe he's being blackmailed. Maybe there's another explanation. You need more than data to convict someone. I need a confession." Adrian pulled out his phone. "Vincent, it's me. I need you at the mansion. Now. We have a situation with the Castellanos territory. Potential merger opportunity, very time sensitive. How fast can you get here?" Evelyn could hear Vincent's response, enthusiastic and immediate. 30 minutes? Perfect. Use the east entrance. Come straight to the secure level. This stays between us until we have the details locked down." He hung up and looked at Marcus. "Get everyone armed and in position. When Vincent arrives, I want him isolated. No phone, no exit, no way to signal anyone." "You're going to confront him?" "I'm going to give him a chance to explain, and depending on what he says..." Adrian didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The next 30 minutes felt like hours. Evelyn watched Adrian transform from the person she'd been getting to know into something harder, colder, more dangerous. This was the crime lord Phoenix feared. This was the man who'd built an empire on calculated violence and absolute control. She wasn't sure which version scared her more. Vincent arrived exactly on time, breezing into the secure level with the confidence of someone who belonged there. He saw Adrian waiting and smiled. "What's so urgent it couldn't wait until morning?" "Close the door, Vincent." Something in Adrian's tone made Vincent's smile falter. He closed the door. Marcus appeared from the side corridor, armed and expressionless. Sarah emerged from the opposite direction. Daniel blocked the exit. "What's going on?" Vincent's hand moved toward his jacket. "Don't." Marcus's gun was out instantly. "Hands where I can see them." Vincent froze, confusion and fear warring across his face. "Adrian, what the hell? How long have you been selling me out to my enemies?" Adrian's voice was conversational, almost friendly. That made it worse. "Months? Years? Since the beginning?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Vincent Castellano, cousin to Javier, the man who died yesterday in a car bombing identical to the one that almost killed me. Adrian pulled up the family records on screen. "You changed your name, buried the connection, spent 8 years earning my trust. Very patient, very smart." Vincent's face went white. I can explain." "Then explain. Explain why you've been accessing sensitive files through a maintenance account. Explain why you viewed personal information on employees 3 days before they started receiving death threats. Explain why your cousin and I were targeted simultaneously with professional-grade explosives. Adrian took a step closer. Explain it in a way that doesn't end with you dying in this room. It wasn't supposed to go like this. Vincent's voice cracked. They promised no one would get hurt. Just information, just enough to force a merger, to end the violence. They said they could unite both organizations, stop the war. Who promised you that? I don't know their real names. I was contacted 6 months ago. Anonymous messages, cryptocurrency payments. They knew about my family connection, knew I had access to your organization. They said if I cooperated, when everything was over, I'd be rewarded, positioned in the new structure. And you believed them? Adrian's laugh was ugly. You've worked for me long enough to know how this world operates. Nobody offers power without strings. Nobody unites rival organizations out of kindness. I thought... Vincent stopped, seemed to realize how pathetic he sounded. My cousin was a monster. You know what he did, how he operated. And you're better than him, but you're still running a criminal empire, still profiting from violence. I thought if someone could take control of both organizations, could end the fighting, maybe it would be worth it. So you sold us both out, helped them plan our murders, targeted our people. Adrian's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Did you know about the bombs? Vincent shook his head frantically. No, I swear. They said it would be a hostile takeover, financial pressure, legal maneuvering. I didn't know they planned to kill you. When I heard about the bombs, I was as shocked as everyone except Evelyn, who actually bothered to pay attention and save my life. Adrian glanced at her. While you were getting ready to profit from my death. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Vincent? Help me understand, because from where I'm standing, you betrayed 8 years of trust, endangered my people, and helped coordinate an attack that would have orphaned children and destroyed families. So please, explain how that was supposed to make Phoenix a better place. Vincent had no answer. He just stood there, trapped between armed guards, looking at the man he'd betrayed with tears running down his face. Evelyn felt sick. Not because of Vincent's betrayal. She'd learned early that people were capable of terrible things when they convinced themselves the ends justified the means, but because she could see what was coming next, could see it in Adrian's expression, in the way Marcus's hand had steadied on his weapon. Adrian, she said quietly. Don't. He looked at her, and for a moment she saw something human in his eyes, something that didn't want to do what came next. Then it was gone, replaced by cold calculation. He made his choice, Adrian said. Now I make mine. He can still be useful. He knows who contacted him, how they operate, what they're planning. He knows what they wanted him to know. He's been played, Evelyn, used and discarded. The moment his usefulness ended, he became a liability to them. Adrian turned back to Vincent. One question. These people who contacted you, did you ever meet them in person, ever see a face, hear a real voice? Vincent shook his head miserably. Then you're worthless. Marcus, wait. Evelyn stepped between them, knowing it was stupid, knowing she was overstepping every boundary of this world she didn't fully understand. You said yourself, you want to be better than your father, better than the monsters who came before. Prove it. Don't just kill him because it's easier. What would you have me do? Give him a stern lecture and send him home? Use him. You want to find the people behind this? Vincent is your connection to them. They don't know you've discovered his betrayal. As far as they know, their inside man is still in position. Adrian studied her for a long moment. You want me to turn him. I want you to be smart instead of angry. Killing him feels good, but it doesn't get you closer to the real enemy. The silence stretched. Then Adrian nodded slowly. Marcus, take Vincent to the detention room. Full isolation, no communication with the outside. We'll use his access to feed false information. See who bites. Vincent sagged with relief. Thank you. Don't thank me. If this works, you live in a cell for the rest of your life. If it doesn't, I'll kill you myself. Adrian's expression was merciless. Either way, the man you were died tonight. What's left is just a tool I'm using to destroy my enemies. They took Vincent away. The room emptied except for Adrian and Evelyn. You stopped me from killing him, Adrian said. I stopped you from wasting an asset. No. You stopped me from becoming exactly what he accused me of being. Adrian moved to the window, looked out at nothing. My father would have pulled the trigger without hesitation, would have enjoyed it. I almost did too. But you didn't. Because you were here. Because someone I respect was watching, and I didn't want you to see me as a monster. He turned to face her. That's dangerous, Evelyn. Caring what someone thinks of you. In this world, it gets you killed. Maybe. Or maybe it keeps you human long enough to find better solutions than bullets. Adrian's smile was genuine this time, soft around the edges. You're idealistic. I don't know if that's refreshing or terrifying. Can it be both? Before he could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the mansion. Marcus's voice came over the intercom, urgent and strained. We have a breach. Multiple armed contacts, east perimeter. They're coming in fast. Adrian's weapon was in his hand instantly. How many? 12? Maybe 15. Professional gear, coordinated approach. This is a full assault. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. They know. Somehow they know we found Vincent. Or this was always the plan. Adrian grabbed her arm. Come on. You're staying with me where I can protect you. They ran through corridors Evelyn was still learning, Adrian moving with the kind of practiced efficiency that came from having escape routes planned for every room. Behind them, she could hear gunfire, sharp cracks that echoed through the mansion's expensive architecture. The war she'd helped identify wasn't coming, it was already here. The gunfire got closer as they descended into the secure level. Adrian pulled her into the war room and slammed the reinforced door behind them, engaging locks that looked like they belonged in a bank vault. How long will that hold? Evelyn's heart was hammering so hard she could barely hear her own voice. Long enough. Adrian moved to the weapons cabinet, started pulling out guns and ammunition. Can you shoot? I've never even held a gun. Then you're about to learn. He pressed a handgun into her hands, showed her the safety, the trigger, how to aim. Point at what you want to hit. Squeeze, don't pull. Keep both eyes open. If someone comes through that door who isn't me or Marcus, you shoot until they stop moving. Evelyn stared at the weapon like it might explode. I can't. You can, because the alternative is letting them kill you, and I know you're smarter than that. His hands covered hers, steadying them. Breathe. You saved my life 2 days ago. Now save your own. The intercom crackled. Marcus's voice strained but controlled. Boss, we've got a situation. They're not here for you. Adrian froze. Explain. They bypassed the main house entirely, went straight for the auxiliary building, the gala prep area. There's nothing there worth... Adrian stopped. His face went absolutely white. The Salazar envoy. They're here for tonight's meeting. Evelyn's mind raced, trying to connect pieces. What meeting? After Castellanos died, his organization fractured. The Salazar cartel has been positioning to absorb the territory, which would make them too powerful to ignore. I arranged a neutral meeting for tonight. Me, the 3 Castellanos lieutenants fighting for control, and representatives from Salazar. The idea was to negotiate a partition instead of a war. He moved to the surveillance feeds. The Salazar envoy arrived early, asked to wait in the auxiliary building while we set up security protocols. And someone knew they'd be there. Someone who wants Salazar dead along with everyone else. Adrian pulled up the external cameras. The auxiliary building, a smaller structure across the courtyard used for events and guest overflow, was surrounded. Armed figures in tactical gear, moving with military precision. This isn't a hit. It's a massacre. They're going to kill everyone in that building and make it look like my security failed. Or like you set them up, Evelyn said quietly. What better way to start a war than to murder cartel representatives at a peace negotiation? Adrian's jaw tightened. Marcus, how many hostiles? 15 outside, unknown number inside. They breached the auxiliary building 3 minutes ago. No communication since. How many people in that building? Salazar brought 4, 2 guards, an advisor, and Marcus's voice caught. And his wife. She came with him. The words hung in the air like poison. Evelyn watched Adrian's expression shift through several emotions too fast to identify, landing somewhere between fury and horror. A civilian, he said flatly. They brought a civilian to a criminal negotiation, and now she's trapped in a building with professional killers. It's not your fault. It's my house, my meeting, my responsibility. He grabbed a tactical vest from the cabinet, started strapping on weapons. Marcus, I need a full count on our people. Who's combat ready? Me, Sarah, Rico, and Santos. Daniel's not trained for this, and half the security detail is pinned down dealing with the perimeter breach. 4 against 15, great odds. Adrian checked his weapon with practiced efficiency. Get everyone to the auxiliary building. We're going in. That's suicide. That's the job. Move. He turned to Evelyn. You stay here. Door stays locked. Anyone tries to come in who isn't me, you empty the magazine into them. Adrian, no arguments. You're brilliant and brave and completely untrained for combat. You stay here where you're safe. And what about you? I stay alive long enough to fix this mess. He moved toward the door, then stopped. Came back. Kissed her forehead so quickly, she almost thought she'd imagined it. Don't die while I'm gone. I'm starting to get attached. Then he was gone, the vault door sealing behind him with a sound like finality. Evelyn stood alone in the war room, holding a gun she didn't know how to use, listening to gunfire that was getting more intense by the second. Every instinct screamed at her to hide, to stay invisible, to let the criminals kill each other while she waited for it to be over. But Adrian was running toward danger to save people, including a civilian woman who had nothing to do with any of this except being married to the wrong person. And Evelyn had spent 2 years being invisible, being safe, watching from the shadows while other people made the choices that mattered. She looked at the surveillance feeds. The auxiliary building had multiple entrances, multiple points of access. The attackers had come in through the main doors, but there were service entrances, the same kind she'd used for 2 years while cleaning this property. Entrances that someone invisible might be able to use without being noticed. Evelyn pulled up the building schematics on the computer, found what she was looking for, a maintenance corridor that ran beneath the courtyard, connecting the main house to the auxiliary building. It was used for utilities, for moving supplies without disrupting events. She'd cleaned it once, months ago. She knew the way. Making the decision felt like stepping off a cliff. Adrian had told her to stay safe. Staying safe was what she'd done for 2 years, and it had kept her alive but slowly suffocating. Now she had a choice: stay hidden in a locked room or do something that might actually matter. Evelyn grabbed a flashlight and extra ammunition she had no idea how to reload, found the access panel to the maintenance corridor, and before she could talk herself out of it, she opened the vault door and ran. The corridor was exactly as she remembered: concrete walls, exposed pipes, dim emergency lighting. Her footsteps echoed no matter how carefully she moved. The gunfire was muffled down here but constant, a reminder that people were dying while she navigated a tunnel like some kind of action hero from a movie. Except she wasn't a hero. She was terrified, holding a gun wrong, probably about to get killed by people who actually knew what they were doing. The tunnel opened into a service room in the auxiliary building's basement. Evelyn climbed the access ladder carefully, listening for sounds above. Voices. Tense, speaking in clipped sentences. Not English. Spanish, but a dialect she didn't recognize. She eased the access panel open an inch. The basement was being used as a staging area, equipment cases, tactical gear, a makeshift command post. 2 men stood guard, both armed with rifles that made her handgun look like a toy. Evelyn's hand shook. She couldn't take on 2 trained fighters, couldn't even take on 1, but she could see what they were protecting: communication equipment, computers running what looked like surveillance feeds, and a timer counting down. 43 minutes. Whatever was happening upstairs, it had a deadline. She needed to get to the main floor, needed to warn someone, needed to do literally anything except hide in a basement access tunnel. But the moment she opened this panel fully, those guards would see her, would shoot her, would end whatever stupid heroic impulse had made her think she could help. The decision was made for her when the building shook with an explosion. Not huge, nothing like the car bombs from days ago, but enough to rattle the structure, to make the guards spin toward the stairs, to give Evelyn exactly 3 seconds of opportunity. She pushed the panel open and scrambled out, moving as quietly as her shaking body would allow. Made it behind a stack of equipment cases just as one of the guards turned back. He scanned the room, rifle ready, then apparently decided whatever he'd heard was just debris from the explosion. They both ran upstairs. Evelyn waited 30 seconds, counting heartbeats. Then she moved to the command post. The computers showed camera feeds from throughout the building. The main ballroom on the first floor was where the massacre was happening. Bodies on the ground, people huddled behind overturned tables, attackers moving through with brutal efficiency. She saw the Salazar envoy, an older man in an expensive suit, bleeding from a shoulder wound while he shielded a woman behind him. His wife, probably. Both of them looked more angry than afraid. Another feed showed Adrian and his team breaching through a side entrance, taking cover behind architectural columns, while bullets tore through the ornate space. They were outnumbered and outgunned, fighting to reach the hostages in the center of the room, and the timer kept counting down. Evelyn scanned the equipment around her. Most of it was military-grade communications gear she had no idea how to use. But there, a radio handset already tuned to an active frequency. She could hear chatter, the attackers coordinating their movements. She picked it up, keyed the transmit button, and spoke in the most authoritative voice she could manage. All teams, command has been compromised. Abort operation and extract immediately. Silence. Then a voice, male and suspicious. Confirm authorization code. Evelyn's mind raced. She had no authorization code. Had no idea what she was doing. But she'd spent 2 years listening to people who thought she couldn't hear them, learning how criminals talked when they thought no one was paying attention. Authorization is the timeline, you idiot. We're 40 minutes from catastrophic failure and you want to play password games? Extract now or the whole operation burns. Another pause, then grudgingly. Confirmed. All teams, begin extraction protocol. On the surveillance feeds, she watched the attackers start pulling back. Not a retreat, too organized for that, but a controlled withdrawal, moving toward exits while maintaining defensive positions. Adrian's voice crackled over a different radio channel. They're falling back. Marcus, watch for traps. This could be... The building shook again. Another explosion, bigger this time. The surveillance feeds went dark one by one as cameras were destroyed or disabled. Evelyn ran for the stairs. The first floor was chaos. Smoke, debris, emergency lights casting everything in red. She couldn't see Adrian, couldn't see anyone clearly through the haze. But she could hear shouting, English and Spanish mixing together, commands and curses and the sounds of people in pain. Over here! A woman's voice, desperate. Please, someone! Evelyn followed the sound, found the Salazar envoy's wife crouched behind an overturned buffet table, cradling her husband's head in her lap. He was unconscious, bleeding badly from multiple wounds. The woman herself had a gash across her forehead, blood running into her eyes. Help him, she said when she saw Evelyn. Please, you have to help him. Medical training kicked in like muscle memory. Evelyn dropped to her knees, checked for a pulse, weak but present. Breathing shallow. The shoulder wound was bad but not immediately fatal. The real problem was what looked like shrapnel damage to his abdomen. I need supplies. Bandages, something to stop the bleeding. Here. Adrian appeared through the smoke, carrying a tactical medical kit. His face was streaked with soot and blood. Not his, Evelyn hoped, and his eyes were wild with adrenaline. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you, yet here we are. She grabbed the kit, started pulling out gauze and pressure bandages. Hold him steady. I need to pack this wound. Adrian dropped beside her without argument, his hands moving to support the unconscious man's torso. The wife watched with desperate hope. Like Evelyn was performing a miracle instead of basic trauma care she'd learned during a semester of clinical rotations years ago. You're going to be okay, Evelyn told the woman, not sure if she was lying. Both of you. Just stay with me. She worked fast, packing the worst wounds, applying pressure where she could. The medical kit had everything she needed. Whoever had stocked it knew what they were doing. She got the bleeding under control, stabilized his breathing, did everything she could with the materials at hand. He needs a hospital, she said finally. Soon. This is just buying time. We'll get him there. Adrian looked at the wife. Can you walk? Yes, but I won't leave him. You won't have to, Marcus, he called into the smoke. I need extraction for 3 civilians. Wounded, critical, needs immediate medical transport. Marcus emerged from the haze, looking worse than Adrian. Ambulance is 2 minutes out, but, boss, we have a bigger problem. Of course we do. The attackers planted charges throughout the building. We found 4 so far, but there could be more. and they're all on the same timer. The countdown in the basement. Evelyn's stomach dropped. How long? 38 minutes, maybe less. Adrian's expression went flat. Evacuate everyone, now. I don't care if they're ours or theirs or caught in the crossfire. Everyone out of this building in the next 5 minutes. What about the bombs? We'll deal with them after people are safe. Move. The next several minutes were controlled chaos. Adrian's security team swept through the building, pulling out everyone they could find. Wounded attackers, terrified staff, the 3 Castellanos lieutenants who'd been hiding in a locked conference room. The Salazar envoy was loaded onto a stretcher, his wife refusing to leave his side even when the paramedics tried to separate them. Evelyn helped where she could, using her medical training to triage injuries to stabilize people long enough to get them to real help. It was like being back in those trauma rotations, except this time the injuries weren't from car accidents or gang violence reported on the news. This was direct, immediate violence she'd been part of. She was checking a young man's head wound, one of the attackers, unconscious and bleeding, when someone grabbed her arm. We need to go. Adrian pulling her toward the exit. Building's clear. Timer's at 32 minutes, and we still haven't found all the charges. We can't just leave. We're not leaving. Bomb squad is en route. But you specifically are leaving right now before I have to carry you. Something in his voice made her stop arguing. They made it out into the courtyard just as fire trucks and ambulances flooded the property. The auxiliary building stood behind them, beautiful and deadly, counting down to its own destruction. Daniel ran up, tablet in hand, looking frantic. I pulled the building schematics, cross-referenced with the charges we found. There's a pattern. They're positioned to bring down the entire structure, but the blast pattern is designed to direct debris toward the main house. They wanted to destroy both buildings, Evelyn said. Kill everyone at the meeting and take out Adrian's headquarters at the same time. Efficient. Adrian's voice was ice. Marcus, how many charges did we recover? 4. All C4. Wireless detonators. Same setup as the car bombs. And the basement? Haven't cleared it yet. Too much equipment in the way. Evelyn grabbed Adrian's arm. I was in the basement. There's a command post, computers, communications gear, and something that looked like a central detonator. If we can shut that down, the timer stops. Maybe. Adrian looked at the building, then at his watch. 29 minutes. Daniel, can you disarm a wireless detonator? In theory, if I can access the control system. Then you and I are going back in. Everyone else stays here and maintains the perimeter. Boss, that's not up for debate. Evelyn, show us where you saw the command post. She wanted to argue that she should stay outside, stay safe, let the professionals handle it. But she was the only one who knew the exact location, the exact setup. And wasting time with explanations could kill them all. They went back in through the maintenance corridor, moving fast but careful. The building felt different now, hollow, waiting, like it knew it was about to die. Evelyn led them to the basement access, showed them the ladder. Adrian went first, weapon ready. Then Daniel with his tablet. Then Evelyn, because apparently she'd completely lost any sense of self-preservation. The basement was exactly as she'd left it except for one detail. Someone was there. A woman, older, dressed in tactical gear but unarmed. She stood at the command post, typing calmly on one of the keyboards like she had all the time in the world. Adrian's gun came up instantly. Step away from the computer. The woman didn't even flinch. Adrian Voss, I was hoping we'd meet before the end. Who are you? Does it matter? I'm someone who's tired of watching men like you and Castellanos tear this city apart. Someone who decided to do something about it. By murdering everyone? Evelyn couldn't keep quiet. By setting bombs and targeting civilians? By removing the cancer that's been poisoning Phoenix for decades? The woman finally looked at them, and her eyes were absolutely cold. You think you're better than the monsters who came before you, Adrian? You think running your empire with rules makes you less of a killer? You're still profiting from suffering, still building your fortune on the backs of people who have no choice but to work with you or die. So your solution is to kill everyone and take over yourself? My solution is to destroy the existing power structure so completely that something new can grow. No more crime families, no more territories, no more cycles of violence that just replace one monster with another. She smiled. 26 minutes until this building comes down. 26 minutes until the main house goes with it, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Daniel was already moving toward the computer. We'll see about that. I wouldn't. The woman pulled a small device from her pocket, a remote detonator. I have a manual trigger. You try to disarm the system, and I detonate everything immediately. You shoot me, my dead hand releases the trigger, and you all die anyway. Stalemate. Adrian's gun stayed steady. What do you want? I want you to understand that this isn't personal. You're probably a decent person in your way, better than most who do what you do, but you're still part of a system that needs to burn. She glanced at Evelyn. Her too. The invisible woman who saved your life. Very touching. Doesn't change the fact that she's chosen to work for criminals instead of finishing her medical training and helping people. The words hit harder than they should have. Evelyn had told herself the same thing for 2 years, that she'd compromised, that she'd chosen survival over principles, that staying invisible was the same as staying innocent. You don't know anything about me, she said quietly. I know you're smart enough to see what Adrian really is. And I know you're still here, still helping him, still choosing this life. The woman's expression softened slightly. It's not too late. Walk away. Let this place burn. Start over somewhere clean. And the people upstairs? The wounded? The woman who came here with her husband and ended up in a war zone? They deserve to burn too? Collateral damage. It's unfortunate, but necessary. That's what everyone says when they're about to do something unforgivable. Evelyn took a step forward, hands empty and visible. You're right about one thing. The system is broken. But you can't fix it by becoming exactly what you claim to hate. I'm nothing like them. You're setting bombs that will kill innocent people. You're targeting anyone connected to the organizations you want to destroy, regardless of their actual guilt. You've convinced yourself that mass murder is justice. Evelyn moved closer. That's not revolution. That's just murder with better marketing. The woman's hand tightened on the detonator. Stop moving. Or what? You'll kill everyone? You're already planning to do that. Another step. You want to know the difference between you and Adrian? He had the chance to kill someone tonight. Someone who betrayed him, who helped plan his murder. And he didn't, because someone reminded him that revenge isn't the same as justice. How noble. But there was something in the woman's voice, uncertainty, maybe, doubt. It's not noble. It's human, making the harder choice because it's right, even when the easy choice would feel better. Evelyn was close enough now to see the woman's face clearly, to see the exhaustion there, the years of anger and pain that had led to this moment. You don't want to do this. You think you do, but you don't. Because once you press that button, you become exactly what you're fighting against. You don't understand. I understand running from the past. I understand making compromises that eat at you. I understand choosing survival over principles, because sometimes that's the only choice you have. Evelyn's voice cracked. But this isn't survival. This is giving up, deciding that if you can't save the world, you might as well burn it down. Silence filled the basement. 24 minutes on the timer. The woman's hand shook. My daughter died because of people like Adrian. She was 16, wrong place, wrong time, caught in a territory dispute that had nothing to do with her. And the people responsible. They're still out there, still operating, still destroying lives. I'm sorry. And Evelyn meant it. That's not fair, it's not right. But killing Adrian won't bring her back. Destroying Phoenix won't give you peace. It'll give me justice. No, it'll give you revenge. And revenge never fills the hole. Evelyn extended her hand. Give me the detonator. Let us find another way. There is no other way. There's always another way. It's just harder. It requires faith that people can change, that systems can be reformed, that tomorrow might be better than today. She took one more step. Please, don't make her death mean this. Don't let it turn you into the thing that killed her. The woman looked at Evelyn's outstretched hand, at Adrian standing behind her, weapon lowered but ready. At Daniel, frozen by the computer. At the timer counting down toward oblivion. 23 minutes. If I give you this, the woman said slowly, what happens to me? You stand trial. You face consequences for what you've done. Adrian's voice was surprisingly gentle. But you face them as someone who chose to stop, not someone who chose to kill. That matters. Does it? To me it does. To Evelyn it does. And I suspect it would have mattered to your daughter. Something broke in the woman's expression. Grief, raw and terrible, finally allowed to surface. Her hand opened and the detonator dropped to the floor. Evelyn caught it before it could hit the ground. The next 20 minutes were a blur. Daniel worked on the computer system, finding the central control program and carefully, methodically disarming each charge remotely. Adrian secured the woman, not roughly, just thoroughly, treating her like someone dangerous who'd chosen to stop being dangerous. And Evelyn stood there holding a detonator that could kill them all, wondering how her life had become something from a movie, instead of the quiet invisibility she'd spent 2 years cultivating. When the timer hit 3 minutes, Daniel finally looked up. Got it. All charges disarmed. We're safe. Evelyn's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the concrete floor, still holding the detonator like a lifeline. Adrian knelt beside her. You okay? I talked her down. I actually talked down a terrorist. You did. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen. Can't it be both? His laugh was shaky with relief. Yeah, it can be both. They sat there for a moment, just breathing, alive when they shouldn't have been. Then Marcus called down the ladder that the bomb squad needed access, and reality crashed back in. The aftermath took hours. Police arrived, real police, not the ones on Adrian's payroll, and suddenly everything was complicated. The Salazar envoy was en route to emergency surgery. His wife was in a separate ambulance, demanding to go with him, threatening international incidents if anyone tried to stop her. The 3 Castellanos lieutenants were under guard, either as witnesses or suspects depending on which authority you asked. And the woman who'd tried to burn it all down was being led away in handcuffs, still looking more exhausted than defiant. Evelyn gave her statement to a detective who clearly didn't believe she was just a housemaid who'd gotten caught up in things. But her story was simple enough. Wrong place, wrong time, tried to help. The detective took notes, looked skeptical, and eventually let her go with instructions not to leave town. Dawn was breaking when she finally made it back to the main house. Adrian found her in the gardens, sitting on the same gazebo bench where they'd talked what felt like years ago, but had only been hours. How you holding up? He asked. I don't know. Ask me when I stop shaking. He sat beside her and they watched the sun paint Phoenix in shades of orange and gold. Emergency vehicles were still leaving the property, neighbors were probably calling lawyers, and somewhere in the city, reporters were writing headlines about whatever version of tonight's events would sell the most papers. The Salazar envoy is going to survive, Adrian said quietly. His wife, too. Doctors say they'll both make full recoveries. That's good. You saved their lives. You saved everyone's lives. You talked down a woman with a detonator when armed professionals would have just shot her and hoped for the best. I got lucky. No. You were compassionate. You saw someone in pain and you tried to help, even though helping put you at risk. He turned to face her. Do you know how rare that is? In my world? In any world? Evelyn didn't have an answer for that. The Salazar family is grateful, Adrian continued. Their representative wants to meet you personally, to thank you for saving his mother. His mother? The envoy's wife. She's the matriarch of the Salazar organization, one of the most powerful people in the cartel's structure. Adrian's smile was complicated. You didn't just save a civilian. You saved someone who has the power to end or escalate conflicts across multiple countries. That kind of debt. It changes things. I didn't do it for political advantage. I know, that's why it matters. He stood, offered her his hand. Come on, we have a visitor. He led her back to the house, to a sitting room that had somehow escaped the night's chaos unscathed. Waiting there was an older woman, the same woman Evelyn had worked on, had told everything would be okay while not believing it herself. Except now she was cleaned up, bandaged, looking far more formidable than she had lying on a ballroom floor. You must be Evelyn, the woman said. Her English was perfect, her accent barely noticeable. I wanted to thank you properly. My husband is alive because of you. I just did what anyone... No. Most people would have run. You stayed. You helped. She moved closer, studying Evelyn with sharp eyes. Adrian tells me you're quite remarkable, that you see things others miss. I pay attention, a valuable skill in any profession. The woman, Evelyn still didn't know her actual name, reached into her jacket and pulled out a card. My family is in your debt. If you ever need anything, protection, resources, a favor, you call this number. Evelyn took the card numbly. I don't understand. You will. Phoenix is changing. Tonight proved that. Old enemies are becoming new allies out of necessity. And people like you, people who choose compassion over violence, who save lives instead of taking them, those people are going to be essential to what comes next. She looked at Adrian. Take care of this one. She's worth protecting. I know. After the woman left, Evelyn sank into a chair. What just happened? You got a favor from the Salazar cartel, which, in the criminal world, is roughly equivalent to winning the lottery. Adrian sat across from her. She meant what she said. You're under their protection now. Anyone who comes after you has to answer to them. I don't want to be under anyone's protection. I just want... She stopped. I don't know what I want anymore. Then figure it out. You have time now. No one's chasing you. No one's trying to kill you. You're safe. Am I? We found one leak, stopped one attack. But you still have enemies. The city is still dangerous. Nothing's actually changed. Everything's changed. Adrian leaned forward. The Castellanos organization is willing to talk about a real merger instead of a power struggle. The Salazar family owes us a debt instead of considering us enemies. And someone just tried to burn down the entire Phoenix underworld, which means every organization in the city now has a common interest in making sure it doesn't happen again. So what, you're forming a criminal alliance? We're forming something better. A truce, real rules, actual consequences for people who break them. He paused. It's not perfect, it's not legal, but it's better than what we had before. And it's possible because of what you did tonight. Evelyn thought about that. About the woman who'd lost her daughter to violence and tried to end violence with more violence. About Adrian choosing not to kill Vincent. About herself, choosing to run toward danger instead of hiding from it. I need sleep, she said finally. And then I need to think about what happens next. Fair enough. Your room is still prepared. Take all the time you need. She made it halfway to the door before stopping. Adrian? Yeah? Thank you. For trusting me. For giving me a chance to be more than invisible. His smile was genuine, warm in a way that made him look younger. Thank you for reminding me that being better is always an option, even when it's harder. Evelyn went upstairs to the guest suite that had somehow become hers, stood in the massive bathroom, looking at herself in the mirror. Same face, same body, but somehow different. 2 days ago, she'd been the invisible woman. Now she was someone who'd saved lives, who'd talked down terrorists, who held favors from crime families like playing cards. She should have been terrified, should have been planning her escape, her return to invisibility and safety. Instead, she felt alive for the first time in years. The sun climbed higher over Phoenix, painting the city an impossible light. Somewhere out there, hospitals were treating wounded, police were filing reports, reporters were writing stories about violence and survival. And in a mansion on the edge of the city, a woman who'd spent 2 years being nobody was becoming someone who mattered. The war wasn't over. But it had changed, and so had she. Evelyn woke to sunlight streaming through windows she'd forgotten to close and the sound of her phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. She'd collapsed into bed still wearing yesterday's clothes, too exhausted to even kick off her shoes. Now her body was reminding her exactly how much she'd put it through. Every muscle ached, her head felt like someone had filled it with concrete, and her hands were still shaking from the adrenaline crash. The phone kept buzzing. She grabbed it, squinted at the screen. 17 missed calls, 12 text messages, all from numbers she didn't recognize. The first message made her stomach drop. This is Carmen Salazar. My mother would like to invite you to lunch today. 2 p.m. at Bella Casa. Non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. That was one way to phrase an invitation from a cartel family. She was still staring at the message when someone knocked on her door. Not the polite tap of hotel staff, the firm, purposeful knock of someone who expected to be let in. Evelyn, you awake? Marcus's voice, sounding far too alert for whatever ungodly hour it was. She checked the time. 1:30 p.m. She'd slept for almost 6 hours, and it felt like 6 minutes. Define awake, she called back. Functional enough to get dressed and look presentable in the next 20 minutes. You have a lunch meeting. I saw the message. Then you know it's not optional. Adrian's orders. I'm driving you there myself. Evelyn dragged herself out of bed and into the shower, letting hot water beat some life back into her exhausted body. 20 minutes later, she was as presentable as she was going to get. Clean clothes, wet hair pulled back, enough concealer to hide the worst of the shadows under her eyes. She looked like someone who'd been through a war, which, Technically, she had. Marcus was waiting in the hallway, looking like he'd actually slept and showered and done all the things functional humans did. He gave her an appraising look. "You'll do. Come on." The drive to Bellicasa took 30 minutes through Phoenix traffic. Marcus didn't make conversation, which Evelyn appreciated. She spent the time trying to figure out what exactly you were supposed to say to the matriarch of a drug cartel who wanted to thank you for saving her life. Bellicasa turned out to be the kind of restaurant where you needed a reservation 6 months in advance, and the waitstaff wore suits nicer than anything Evelyn had ever owned. Marcus pulled up to the valet, helped her out of the car like she was someone important instead of someone who'd been scrubbing toilets 3 days ago. "You want me to come in with you?" he asked. "Is that allowed?" "Probably not, but I'll do it anyway if you're uncomfortable." Evelyn thought about it. About facing this meeting alone versus having backup. About continuing to rely on other people or starting to stand on her own. "I'll be fine," she said, not entirely believing it. "Your call. I'll be out here if you need anything. Text me when you're ready to leave." The hostess recognized her somehow, or more likely, recognized that she was expected. She was led through the main dining room, past tables full of people eating $100 lunches, to a private room in the back that probably cost more to reserve than Evelyn's monthly rent used to be. Carmen Salazar was waiting, along with her mother and 2 other women Evelyn didn't recognize. The matriarch looked better than she had 12 hours ago, still bandaged, but dressed impeccably and radiating the kind of power that made everyone else in the room feel like supporting cast. "Evelyn Cruz." Carmen stood, extended her hand. "Thank you for coming." "I got the impression it wasn't really a request." "It wasn't, but we appreciate you honoring it anyway." She gestured to the table. "Sit, eat. We have much to discuss." The next hour was surreal. They ordered food Evelyn couldn't pronounce and probably couldn't afford, made small talk about Phoenix and weather and everything except the obvious topic hanging in the air. The matriarch, whose actual name was apparently Isabella, though Carmen referred to her as Madre, watched Evelyn with sharp, assessing eyes that missed nothing. Finally, after the main course arrived and the waitstaff retreated, Isabella spoke directly to Evelyn for the first time. "You have medical training." It wasn't a question. "Yes, I didn't finish my degree." "Why not?" "Personal circumstances, family debt. The usual story of promising futures derailed by reality." "And you ended up working for Adrian Voss as a housemaid. It paid cash and didn't ask questions. That was worth more than prestige." Isabella smiled slightly. "Practical. I respect that. Tell me, why did you help my husband last night? You could have run. Should have run. Instead, you stayed in a war zone to perform first aid on a criminal you'd never met." He was bleeding out. His wife was terrified. "I had the skills to help." Evelyn met her eyes. "That's not a choice. That's just being human. Most humans would disagree. Most people, when faced with violence and danger, choose self-preservation over compassion. Then most people haven't spent time in emergency rooms watching what happens when no one helps. When everyone just assumes someone else will do something." She thought about her father, dying alone while she was too far away to save him. "I've seen what happens when people choose not to help. I won't be that person." Isabella studied her for a long moment. Then she looked at Carmen. "I like her." "I told you you would. Which brings us to the real reason for this meeting." Isabella leaned forward. "My organization has been invited to participate in what Adrian is calling the Phoenix Accord, a formal agreement between all major criminal enterprises operating in this city: territories, rules of engagement, dispute resolution, protection of civilians. A truce, Evelyn said. More than that. A complete restructuring of how organized crime operates in Phoenix. No more random violence. No more civilian casualties. No more wars that destroy neighborhoods and kill innocent people." She paused. "It's ambitious. Probably impossible. But after last night, after someone tried to kill everyone with power in this city, we're all motivated to make it work." "What does this have to do with me?" Adrian suggested you as a neutral mediator. Someone with no stake in any organization, no loyalty except to doing what's right. Someone all parties can trust because you proved you care more about saving lives than picking sides. Evelyn's mouth went dry. "You want me to negotiate between crime families?" "We want you to help us build something better than what we have. You have insights none of us possess. You've been invisible, watching how these organizations operate, seeing the flaws and failures from the outside. Carmen spoke now, her voice intense. You saved my mother's life. You talked down a terrorist who was seconds from killing everyone. You've proven you can stay calm under pressure and find solutions when everyone else sees only violence. I'm not qualified. You're more qualified than any of us. We're all criminals. We all have blood on our hands. We all approach problems through the lens of power and control. Isabella's expression softened. You approach problems by trying to heal them. That's what we need right now. And if I say no, then we try to build this accord without you and probably fail. Old habits die hard. Old enemies don't trust each other. Without someone neutral pushing us to be better, we'll fall back into familiar patterns. She paused. Your father died because of debts to criminals. You ran and hid for 2 years because of what people like us do to innocent lives. This is your chance to change that, to build a system where fewer people end up destroyed by circumstances they can't control. The words hit exactly where they were meant to. Evelyn thought about her father, about the debt collectors who'd made her life hell, about 2 years of being invisible because being visible meant being vulnerable, about the woman last night who'd lost her daughter to gang violence and tried to burn down the world in response. I need time to think about it, she said finally. You have until tomorrow morning. The first formal negotiation session happens at 10 a.m. We need your answer by then. Isabella stood, signaling the meeting was over. Whatever you decide, you have my family's protection and gratitude, but I hope you'll choose to help us. We need people like you more than you realize. Marcus was waiting outside, leaning against the car and scrolling through his phone. He looked up when Evelyn emerged. How'd it go? They want me to negotiate a criminal peace treaty. Yeah, Adrian mentioned that might come up. What'd you tell them? That I need time to think. She got in the car, suddenly exhausted all over again. Take me back to the mansion. I need to talk to Adrian. She found him in the war room, surrounded by screens showing real-time feeds from across Phoenix. He looked up when she entered, something complicated crossing his face. I heard about your lunch meeting, he said. You set it up. You suggested me as a mediator. I suggested you as someone both sides could trust. They're the ones who decided that meant mediator. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. Sit. Talk to me. Evelyn sat, trying to organize thoughts that felt like they were moving too fast to catch. Why me? You have actual negotiators, people trained for this. Why push an ex-medical student with no experience into the middle of your criminal politics? Because you're not part of the system. You don't have allegiances or agendas, you just want to help people. He pulled up files on the screen, organizational charts, territory maps, incident reports. Look at this. 37 civilian deaths in the last year from gang violence in Phoenix. Hundreds injured, families destroyed, neighborhoods terrorized, all because we can't figure out how to coexist without killing each other. And you think I can fix that? I think you can help us want to fix it. You remind us what we're fighting for, or what we should be fighting for. He turned to face her directly. Last night you talked down someone who was ready to commit mass murder. You did it by appealing to her humanity, by making her remember what she actually cared about instead of what she was angry about. That's the skill we need right now. What if I fail? What if I make things worse? Then we're no worse off than we were before. But if you succeed, he pulled up projections, models, data showing what Phoenix could look like with coordinated criminal activity instead of chaotic violence. We could actually build something that works. Not perfect, not legal, but better than what we have. Evelyn studied the screens. The data was compelling. Reduced violence, safer neighborhoods, fewer civilian casualties, but the cost was legitimizing organized crime, making it more efficient instead of eliminating it. You're asking me to help criminals be better at being criminals, she said. I'm asking you to help reduce suffering. Yes, the people you'd be helping include criminals, but the real beneficiaries would be everyone else. The families who wouldn't lose sons to gang violence, the neighborhoods that wouldn't become war zones, the kids who could walk to school without worrying about crossfire. He paused. You became invisible to escape violence. This is your chance to make violence less necessary for everyone. By working with the people who create it, by working with the people who have the power to reduce it. Like it or not, organized crime exists. It's not going away. The question is whether it operates like the Wild West or like a regulated industry. Adrian's smile was sad. I know it's a compromise. I know it's not the pure solution you'd prefer, but it's the real solution that might actually save lives. Evelyn thought about her father, about debt collectors, about 2 years of hiding, about the woman last night who'd lost everything to gang violence, about the Salazar matriarch lying on a ballroom floor while Evelyn tried to stop her from bleeding out. If I do this, she said slowly, I need guarantees, real ones. No targeting civilians, no recruiting minors, no human trafficking. Those are non-negotiable. Agreed. Those are already in the draft accord. And I need resources. I can't mediate between organizations I don't understand. I need full access to operations, finances, everything. Complete transparency, or I walk. You'll have it. And medical supplies. If we're reducing violence, we need infrastructure to treat people who get hurt anyway. Clinics, trained staff, equipment. She was talking faster now, ideas forming as she spoke. Most gang violence happens because people can't get legitimate help. If we create alternatives, then we reduce the violence at its source. I like it. Adrian was smiling now, genuinely pleased. You're already thinking systemically. That's exactly what we need. I haven't agreed yet. But you're going to. I can see it in your face. You've already started planning how to make this work. He was right. Damn him. He was right. Evelyn had spent 2 years invisible, watching problems she couldn't fix, seeing suffering she couldn't address. Now someone was offering her the chance to actually do something, and she couldn't walk away from that no matter how compromised the solution felt. I have conditions, she said. Name them. I need to finish my medical degree. Not someday, not eventually. Now. I'll do the mediation work, but I'm also enrolling in classes and completing my training. Done. I'll cover tuition and arrange your schedule around the negotiations. And when this is over, when the accord is established and functioning, I walk away. I don't become part of your organization permanently. I help build the system, then I go back to being a doctor. Adrian's expression flickered with something that might have been disappointment, but he nodded. Fair enough. Though I reserve the right to try to convince you to stay. You can try. You'll fail. She stood, extended her hand. We have a deal. He shook it, his grip warm and firm. Welcome to the Phoenix Accord, Evelyn Cruz. Try not to get killed. The next week was chaos of a different kind. The first negotiation session happened in a secure location, a private estate outside the city, neutral ground that didn't belong to any organization. Evelyn arrived with Marcus and Adrian to find representatives from 6 different criminal enterprises already gathered, all eyeing each other with the kind of suspicion that usually preceded violence. The Salazar family had sent Carmen and 2 advisors. The 3 Castellanos lieutenants, now calling themselves the Castellanos Council, arrived separately, still not entirely unified but willing to present a common front. There were 2 other organizations Evelyn hadn't heard of, smaller operations that controlled specific territories and wanted a voice in whatever came next. And in the corner, looking uncomfortable and out of place, was Vincent. Adrian's former financial advisor, now serving as a source of intelligence about the people who'd tried to start the war. He was there under guard, still facing consequences, but useful enough to keep alive. This is going to be a disaster, Evelyn muttered to Adrian. Probably, but it's our disaster. Make it work. She stepped to the front of the room, feeling every eye turned to her. A month ago, she'd been invisible. Now she was standing in front of crime lords trying to convince them not to kill each other. Thank you all for coming, she started, her voice steadier than she felt. I know most of you don't want to be here. I know you'd rather settle your disputes the old way. But the old way almost got everyone in this room killed last week, so maybe we try something new. And who are you to tell us what to do? One of the Castellanos Council, a man named Rico who looked like he'd learned violence before language. I'm nobody. I'm the person who saved Isabella Salazar's life. I'm the person who stopped a terrorist from blowing us all up. I'm the person who doesn't have a stake in any of your organizations, which makes me the only one here you can all trust, to be honest. She met his eyes. And I'm the person Adrian Voss trusts to build something better than what got his father killed and your boss murdered. So you can either work with me or waste everyone's time proving how tough you are. Silence. Then Carmen laughed, breaking the tension. I like her. Madre was right. The negotiations took 6 hours. 6 hours of arguing about territories, about revenue sharing, about how to handle disputes without defaulting to violence. Evelyn let them fight, let them posture, let them exhaust themselves with old grievances. Then she started asking questions. What do you actually want? Not what you think you deserve or what you used to have. What do you want moving forward? The answers were surprisingly similar. Stability, predictability, the ability to operate without constantly watching for attacks, protection for their families, respect from the other organizations. So you all want the same things, Evelyn said, which means this isn't about conflicting goals. It's about trust. You don't believe the other organizations will honor agreements, so you don't make them. Hard to trust people who've been trying to kill you for years, Rico said. Then we build accountability. Not trust. That takes time. But consequences. Real ones. If someone breaks the accord, what happens? The room went quiet. Finally, Adrian spoke. Joint enforcement. If one organization violates the agreement, the others work together to handle it. No one acts alone, no one gets to play vigilante. We're all responsible for maintaining the peace. You're saying if I step out of line, you'd help the Salazar family come after me? Rico sounded incredulous. I'm saying if you step out of line, you make enemies of everyone in this room. And that's a fight you can't win. The logic was brutal but effective. They spent the next 2 hours hammering out enforcement mechanisms, dispute resolution procedures, and territorial boundaries. It wasn't perfect. There were holes, compromises, things that would need to be revisited. But by the time they broke for the day, they had the skeleton of an actual agreement. Evelyn was exhausted. She'd barely spoken after her opening statement, mostly just facilitating while the actual criminals negotiated. But she'd kept them focused, kept them moving forward, kept them from falling back into old patterns of threats and posturing. You did good, Adrian said on the drive back to the mansion. Better than good. You got them talking instead of shooting. Talking isn't the same as agreeing. This could still fall apart. But it didn't fall apart today. That's progress. The sessions continued over the next week. Each day brought new challenges, arguments about specific territories, debates over how to handle external threats, questions about what happened to existing conflicts. Evelyn learned to navigate the personalities, to know when to push and when to let things simmer. She learned that Carmen Salazar was far smarter than she let on, that Rico was actually reasonable once you got past his aggression, that Adrian was genuinely trying to build something sustainable instead of just protecting his own interests. She also learned that compromise felt like losing to everyone involved, but that sometimes losing a little was better than everyone losing everything. Between negotiation sessions, she enrolled in online medical courses, spent nights studying anatomy and pharmacology while her days were consumed with criminal politics. It was exhausting and exhilarating and nothing like the invisible life she'd lived for 2 years. Marcus noticed first. You look different, he said one morning while driving her to another session. Different how? Like you're actually living instead of just surviving. He was right. The constant fear that had defined her existence for 2 years was fading, replaced by something more complex. She was still scared, terrified actually, of failing, of getting people killed, of being wrong. But she was also engaged in a way she hadn't been since medical school. She was using her brain, solving problems, making a difference. It felt like coming back to life. The breakthrough came during the 3rd week of negotiations. They'd been arguing for 2 hours about how to handle a territorial dispute between the Salazar organization and one of the smaller crews when Evelyn finally lost her patience. Stop, she said, loud enough to cut through the arguing. Just stop. You're not going to solve this by arguing about who was here first or who deserves what. You know why? Because you're asking the wrong question. What's the right question? Carmen asked, sounding genuinely curious. The right question is what would benefit everyone most. Not just your organization, everyone in this room, plus everyone who lives in the disputed territory. What solution creates the most value for the most people? That's not how territory works. Then maybe that's the problem. Maybe treating territory like something to be conquered instead of something to be managed is why you're all constantly at war. Evelyn pulled up a map on the screen. Look at this disputed area. It's mostly residential, right? Families, kids, people trying to live their lives. What do they need? Silence. The criminals in the room clearly hadn't considered what civilians needed. They need safety, Evelyn continued. They need functional infrastructure. They need economic opportunity. So instead of fighting over who controls the territory, why not collaborate? Salazar handles distribution. The other crew handles local security. You split the revenue and both organizations benefit. Plus, the people living there get better protection and fewer gunfights in their streets. You're suggesting we work together? The smaller crew's representative looked baffled. I'm suggesting that competition doesn't have to mean conflict. You can both operate in the same space without killing each other if you're providing different services. She looked around the room. That's what legitimate businesses do. They find their niche, they collaborate where it makes sense, they compete on quality instead of violence. The silence that followed felt different, thoughtful instead of hostile. Adrian spoke first. It could work. We'd need clear boundaries about responsibilities, revenue sharing, dispute resolution. But the basic concept is sound. It sets a precedent, Carmen added. If we can make collaboration work in one territory, we can apply the model elsewhere, which reduces conflict across the board. Rico was nodding now, seeing the possibilities. Less fighting means less heat from law enforcement, fewer casualties, more stable operations. The conversation shifted. Instead of arguing about who deserved what, they started problem-solving how to make collaboration work. Evelyn watched it happen with a mixture of pride and unease. She was helping criminals be more efficient, but she was also helping them be less violent, and that had to count for something. By the end of the session, they had a pilot program. One disputed territory managed collaboratively with clear metrics for success and failure. If it worked, they'd expand the model. If it failed, they'd go back to the drawing board. You're good at this, Carmen said afterward, catching Evelyn before she could leave. Better than you realize. I'm just applying basic problem solving. You're doing more than that. You're making us see each other as potential partners instead of inevitable enemies. That's not a small thing. She paused. My mother wants to offer you a position. Formal advisor to the Salazar organization. Salary, benefits, protection. You'd be valuable to us. I'm not for sale. I didn't say you were, but you're clearly committed to making this work, and we'd like to support that commitment. Think about it. Evelyn thought about it that night, lying awake in the guest suite that had somehow become home. She thought about Carmen's offer, about Adrian's trust, about the Phoenix Accord taking shape. She thought about her father, about debt collectors, about 2 years of invisibility, and she thought about the choice she was making, to use her skills helping criminals instead of helping patients. Was it compromise? Absolutely. Was it selling out? Maybe. But it was also reducing violence, saving lives, building something that might actually make Phoenix safer. She fell asleep without answers, but with something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. The final negotiation session happened a month after the attacks. By then, the pilot program was showing results. Violence in the disputed territory was down 60%. Civilian complaints had dropped, and both organizations were seeing better revenue than when they'd been fighting over scraps. The success made the final agreement easier to reach. They formalized everything: territories, enforcement mechanisms, dispute resolution, protection of civilians. They created a council with representatives from each organization to oversee implementation. They established communication channels and regular meetings and actual accountability. It wasn't perfect. There were still gaps, still opportunities for betrayal, still the fundamental problem that they were legitimizing criminal activity. But it was functional. It was sustainable. And most importantly, it was working. When they signed the accord, actual signatures on actual documents, like this was a real treaty instead of an agreement between criminals, Evelyn felt something shift. Phoenix hadn't become safe overnight, but it had become safer, and that was worth the compromises. Adrian found her afterward, standing on the balcony looking out at the city. You did it, he said quietly. We did it. I just facilitated. You did more than that. You gave us a vision of what we could be instead of what we've always been. He moved to stand beside her. The Salazar family made you an offer. So did 2 other organizations. You could have your pick of positions, more money than you'd know what to do with. But I'm hoping you'll stay with me, not as an employee, as a partner. Help me build on what we started. Turn my organization into something that actually deserves the power it has. Evelyn looked at him, at the crime lord who'd become something like a friend, who'd trusted her when he had no reason to, who'd given her a chance to matter when she'd been invisible for so long. I told you from the beginning, she said. When this is over, I go back to being a doctor. That hasn't changed. I know, but maybe it doesn't have to be either or. Maybe you can do both. Finish your degree, practice medicine, medicine, and also help us maintain what we've built. He paused. The Accord needs someone neutral to survive, someone all parties trust. That's you. You're asking me to split my life between healing people and helping criminals. I'm asking you to find a way to do both, because you're good at both, and because the world needs people who can bridge those gaps. She wanted to say no, wanted to walk away clean, go back to medical school, forget this whole chapter of her life. But she'd seen what was possible now, had seen violence reduced, lives saved, suffering prevented. Could she really walk away from that? I need to think about it, she said finally. Fair enough. You know where to find me when you decide. He left her alone with the city and her thoughts. Phoenix spread out below, beautiful and broken, and full of people just trying to survive. People like she'd been invisible, afraid, running from violence they couldn't control. But now she had the power to change that. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough to matter. The question was whether she was willing to live with the compromise that power required. 3 months after the Phoenix Accord was signed, Evelyn stood in a clinic that shouldn't have existed. It occupied a converted warehouse in a neighborhood where ambulances didn't come unless someone was already dead. The space was clean but basic. Exam rooms sectioned off with temporary walls, donated medical equipment that worked well enough, a pharmacy stocked through channels she'd learned not to ask about too closely. The sign outside said, Phoenix Community Health Center in English and Spanish, deliberately vague about who ran it or who it served. Evelyn ran it, with funding from 6 criminal organizations who discovered that providing healthcare to their communities reduced violence better than bullets ever had. We've got another one, Sarah called from the intake area. She'd left her position as Adrian's logistics coordinator to help manage the clinic, claiming she was tired of planning drug shipments when she could be doing something that actually helped people. Gunshot wound through and through, patients refusing to go to a hospital. Evelyn grabbed her kit and moved to the exam room. The patient was young, maybe 19, bleeding through a makeshift bandage while his girlfriend hovered nearby looking terrified. Gang tattoos covered his arms, one of the smaller crews that hadn't joined the Accord yet, still operating like the old days meant something. Let me see, Evelyn said, pulling on gloves. The kid flinched. You're not going to report this? I'm going to treat you. What you do after that is your business. She examined the wound, clean through the shoulder, messy but not life-threatening if she could stop the infection risk. You're lucky. Missed the major vessels. This is going to hurt, but you'll survive. She worked in silence, cleaning the wound, checking for bullet fragments, starting an IV antibiotic drip. The girlfriend watched with wide eyes, gradually relaxing as she realized Evelyn actually knew what she was doing. Why do you do this? The kid asked while Evelyn was suturing. Run a clinic for people like me. You could work anywhere. Because people like you deserve healthcare too, even if you make stupid choices about who to shoot at. She tied off the last suture. You're going to need to keep this clean, change the dressing daily, finish the full course of antibiotics. Can you do that? Yeah, I can do that. Good. And maybe consider that whatever dispute put a bullet in your shoulder isn't worth dying over. The Accord exists for a reason. My crew doesn't recognize the Accord. Then your crew is going to end up dead or in prison while everyone else moves forward. Your choice. She pulled off her gloves, made notes in his chart. Come back in a week so I can check the healing. No charge. After he left, Sarah appeared in the doorway. You're getting soft, giving free follow-up care to gang members. I'm a doctor. It's what I do. Evelyn washed her hands, trying to scrub away the fatigue that seemed permanent these days. How many patients today? 17. Mix of routine care and trauma. We're running low on IV antibiotics again. I'll talk to Carmen. The Salazar supply chain has pharmaceutical connections. See, this is what I mean by soft. A year ago, you were hiding from criminals. Now you're calling cartel representatives by their first names and asking for medical supply hookups. Evelyn dried her hands, thought about that. Sarah wasn't wrong. In the 3 months since the Accord, she'd become something she'd never intended. A bridge between criminal organizations and legitimate society, using resources from one to help people failed by the other. It was compromise built on compromise, ethics bent so far they were practically circular. But it was also working. The clinic had treated over 300 patients, people who wouldn't have sought care otherwise, who couldn't afford hospitals, who didn't trust authorities enough to get help through official channels. She'd stitched knife wounds and treated overdoses and diagnosed diabetes and delivered 2 babies. She'd saved lives that would have been lost to the gap between what society provided and what people actually needed. "I'm not soft," she said finally. "I'm practical. These people need help. I can provide it. Everything else is just details." Her phone buzzed, Adrian's name on the screen. "We have a situation. Can you come to the mansion?" "What kind of situation?" "The kind that needs your particular skills. Vincent's intelligence finally paid off. We found the person who coordinated the attacks." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. The mansion felt different now. Less like a crime lord's fortress, and more like the headquarters of a complicated political operation. Representatives from different organizations came and went regularly. Meetings happened in conference rooms instead of dark corners, and the whole operation had taken on an air of bureaucratic legitimacy that would have been funny if it wasn't so effective. Adrian met her in the war room, along with Marcus, Carmen, and 2 of the Castellanos Council representatives. On the screen was a face Evelyn didn't recognize. A woman in her 40s, professional-looking, the kind of person you'd pass on the street without noticing. "Her name is Patricia Hendricks," Adrian said, "former military contractor, specialized in regime change operations. She was hired 6 months ago to destabilize Phoenix's criminal infrastructure." "Hired by who?" Evelyn asked. "That's the interesting part. A coalition of legitimate business interests who wanted to eliminate organized crime so they could develop properties in currently contested areas." Carmen's voice dripped with irony. "Turns out legal corporations are just as willing to kill people for profit. They just use different methods." "Where is she now?" "In custody. Federal agents picked her up this morning based on intelligence we provided. She's looking at multiple murder charges, terrorism, conspiracy." Adrian paused. "She's also offering to testify about everyone who hired her." "Which is going to be a problem," Marcus said, "because the people who hired her include a state senator, 2 city council members, and executives from 4 major development corporations. This goes public. It's going to be a scandal that makes everyone look bad." Evelyn processed that. "You're worried about publicity." "I'm worried about what happens when the public discovers that legitimate business leaders hired a mercenary to commit mass murder because they wanted real estate." Adrian pulled up news articles, analysis, projections. "The Accord works because it's quiet, because we're operating below the radar, making improvements without drawing attention. This kind of exposure could destroy everything we've built. Or it could prove that we're not the biggest threat to public safety," Carmen countered. "That the real danger comes from people who hide behind legitimacy while being just as ruthless as any criminal." They argued for 20 minutes about strategy, about messaging, about whether to help the prosecution or try to minimize the story. Evelyn listened, thinking about the woman who'd tried to burn down Phoenix, about her daughter killed in gang violence, about the endless cycle of people using violence to solve problems created by violence. "What does she want?" Evelyn interrupted. "Patricia Hendricks. What's she asking for in exchange for testimony?" "Reduced sentence. Protective custody? The usual." Adrian looked confused about the relevance. "Have you talked to her? Actually talked to her? Not just read reports from federal agents?" "Why would I?" "Because she spent 6 months planning to destroy both your organizations. That takes commitment, resources, a reason beyond just money." Evelyn stood. "I want to talk to her." "That's not—" "Adrian, you brought me into this because I see things differently. So let me see this differently. Worst case, I waste an hour. Best case, I learn something useful." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll make the arrangements." The federal holding facility was exactly as grim as Evelyn expected, concrete and fluorescent lights, and the particular smell of institutional despair. Patricia Hendricks sat in an interview room looking tired but composed, like someone who'd expected to end up here eventually. "You're not a federal agent," she said when Evelyn walked in. "No. I'm someone who stopped you from killing a lot of people." "Ah, the housemaid who played hero." Patricia's smile was cold. "How does it feel working for the people you used to hide from?" "Complicated." "How does it feel murdering people for real estate developers?" "Like a job. I've done worse for worse reasons. She leaned back in her chair. You want to understand why? Everyone does. They think if they can understand the motivation, they can make it make sense. I want to understand what you thought would happen after. You kill both crime lords, their organizations collapse. Then what? You think legitimate businesses just swoop in and everything becomes peaceful? I think chaos creates opportunity. The people who hired me wanted that chaos. They had plans to capitalize on it. Development projects, political appointments, business ventures. They would have rebuilt Phoenix in their image. By stepping over bodies. Every city is built on bodies. At least I was honest about it. Patricia tilted her head. You're not here to judge me. You're here because you're trying to decide if the people you work with are any better than the people who hired me, and you're afraid the answer is no. The accuracy stung. I'm here because I think there's more to this story than corporate greed. You're right. There is. Patricia's expression shifted, becoming something more human. I had a sister, younger, brilliant, beautiful. She got caught up with the wrong people, started using, got in debt, ended up working for one of the crews that used to control the Northern Territories. By the time I found out, she was already too deep. I tried to get her out, offered money, protection, everything. They said she was theirs until they were done with her. Evelyn felt her stomach tighten. What happened? She overdosed. Fentanyl-laced heroin provided by her employers. She was 23. Patricia's voice stayed flat, clinical. I spent 2 years tracking down everyone responsible. Then I spent another year learning that going after individual criminals was pointless. Cut off one head, another grows back. The system was the problem. So you decided to destroy the system. I decided to create enough chaos that someone would have to build something better. And you know what? I was right. The Phoenix Accord exists because I forced those organizations to confront their own vulnerability. You're running clinics and reducing violence because I made them realize they couldn't just keep killing each other indefinitely. You murdered people. I killed criminals who'd killed dozens themselves, who profited from suffering, who destroyed lives like my sister's without a second thought. Patricia leaned forward. Don't stand there and pretend your hands are clean. You work with those same criminals now. You take their money, use their resources, help them operate more efficiently. The only difference between us is that you've convinced yourself your compromise is noble. The words hit like a physical blow because they were partly true. Evelyn had made compromises, had chosen to work with criminals because the alternative was letting violence continue unchecked. She told herself it was harm reduction, that imperfect solutions were better than no solutions. But Patricia was right. She'd made peace with things she'd have found unthinkable a year ago. The difference, Evelyn said quietly, is that I'm trying to build something instead of just destroying what exists. You wanted chaos. I want structure. You killed people. I'm trying to save them. And when your structure requires you to sacrifice someone, when the Accord demands violence to maintain itself, what will you do then? I don't know. But I'll face that choice when it comes instead of making it now out of anger. She stood. I'm sorry about your sister. That's real, and it's awful, and no one should have to go through that. But revenge disguised as revolution is still just revenge, and it doesn't fix anything. We'll see. When the trial happens, when all those respectable business people get exposed as co-conspirators in mass murder, maybe society will finally admit that the real criminals wear suits and hide behind corporations. Patricia smiled. I'm going to prison, but I'm taking them with me. That's worth it. Evelyn left the interview room feeling hollowed out. Patricia's words kept echoing. What happens when the Accord demands violence? When compromise requires sacrificing the principles that made you care in the first place? She'd been so focused on building something better that she hadn't fully confronted what maintaining it might cost. Adrian was waiting in the parking lot. Learn anything useful? Yeah, that there's not much difference between justice and revenge when you're the one deciding which is which. She got in the car. She's going to testify, going to expose everyone who hired her. It's going to be messy. I know. The question is what we do about it. We let it happen. We cooperate with the investigation. We provide evidence. We make sure the people who hired her face consequences. Evelyn looked at him. And then we use it. We show Phoenix that the real threat wasn't the criminal organizations. It was the people pretending to be legitimate while hiring terrorists. We prove the Accord works by being more transparent and accountable than the business people who tried to destroy us. Adrian was quiet for a moment. That's risky. Could backfire, make everyone look bad. Could also work. Could prove that organized crime willing to operate by rules is less dangerous than corporate interests willing to commit mass murder for profit. She paused. You wanted to be better than your father. This is how. Not by hiding what you are, but by being honest about it and proving you're still preferable to the alternative. When did you get so good at political strategy? When I spent 3 months negotiating between organizations that wanted to kill each other. You learn fast, or you die. She smiled despite herself. Besides, I learned from the best. You've been playing political games since before I knew they existed. And look how well that turned out. I almost got blown up. But you didn't, because someone who'd been invisible for 2 years paid attention and saved your life. Evelyn looked out the window at Phoenix passing by. The city she'd hidden in, run through, finally started to change. We're all just making it up as we go, aren't we? Trying to be better than we were yesterday and hoping it's enough. Yeah, pretty much. The trial happened 4 months later and was exactly the media circus everyone expected. Patricia Hendricks testified for 3 days, providing detailed evidence about who hired her, what they'd asked her to do, and how they'd planned to profit from the chaos. 2 state senators resigned. A city council member was indicted. 4 development corporations faced criminal conspiracy charges. And the Phoenix Accord came out looking surprisingly legitimate by comparison. Evelyn watched the coverage from the clinic, between patients. The narrative had shifted. Instead of criminal organizations being the primary threat to public safety, suddenly the conversation was about corporate accountability and how legitimate business interests were willing to commit atrocities for profit. The Accord became a cautionary tale about what happens when society pushes criminal activity so far underground that the only options are chaos or self-regulation. Never thought I'd see the day when gang leaders looked more ethical than business executives, Sarah commented, reading an editorial that praised the Accord's civilian protection clauses. It's all relative. We're just less terrible than the alternative. Evelyn finished entering patient notes, moved to the next file. How are we doing on funding? Surprisingly well. 2 legitimate foundations want to partner with us, provide grant money for the clinic without asking too many questions about where our other resources come from. And Adrian's organization donated another $100,000 last week. Evelyn had stopped being surprised by Adrian's generosity. In the 6 months since the Accord, he'd transformed his operation from a traditional crime syndicate into something more complex, still criminal, still involved in illegal activities, but operating with a code that prioritized sustainability over violence. He'd shut down the most exploitative parts of his business, redirected resources toward community investment, and somehow made it profitable. He called it enlightened self-interest. Evelyn called it proof that even criminals could change when they had the right motivation. She saw him less now than she had during the crisis. He was busy managing his organization, implementing the Accord's provisions, dealing with the fallout from the trial. But he still called regularly, still asked her opinion on decisions, still treated her like a partner instead of an employee. And somewhere in the process of building something together, they'd become friends. Real friends, not just allies of convenience, people who understood each other's compromises and didn't judge the choices that had led them there. Her phone rang. Adrian's name. I need you at the mansion tonight, 7 p.m., formal attire. Why? Because we're celebrating. The Accord has been active for 6 months without a major violation. That's worth acknowledging. I don't do formal events. You do now. Consider it part of your consulting contract. Besides, someone wants to meet you. Who? You'll see. Just be there. Please. She went because Adrian rarely said please and because she was curious. Borrowed a dress from Sarah, did something with her hair that approximated professional, and showed up at the mansion feeling wildly out of place. The celebration was smaller than she'd expected, maybe 30 people total, representatives from each organization, plus a few outsiders she didn't recognize. Adrian met her at the door, looking unfairly good in a suit that probably cost more than her medical school tuition. You came, he said, like he'd doubted she would. You said please, that's basically a binding contract. She looked around the room. Who am I meeting? Come on, I'll introduce you. He led her through the crowd to where Isabella Salazar stood talking with an older man Evelyn didn't recognize. The matriarch smiled when she saw them. Evelyn, I'm glad you could join us. I'd like you to meet someone. She gestured to the man beside her. This is Dr. Ramon Vasquez. He runs the trauma surgery program at Phoenix General Hospital. Evelyn shook his hand, confused about why she was meeting a hospital administrator at a criminal celebration. Dr. Vasquez has a proposal for you, Isabella continued, but I'll let him explain. I've been following your work at the community clinic, Dr. Vasquez said. The trauma cases you've treated, the outcomes you've achieved with limited resources. It's impressive work. Thank you, but I'd like to offer you a position. Complete your medical degree through our residency program, work in our trauma department, and continue running your clinic as a community outreach initiative. We'd provide resources, supervision, official legitimacy. He paused. You'd be bridging the gap between hospital care and community need. Exactly what healthcare should do, but usually doesn't. Evelyn stared at him. You're offering me a residency position after I spent 6 months working with criminal organizations? I'm offering you a position because you spent 6 months working with criminal organizations and still managed to provide excellent patient care. That takes skill and dedication. He smiled. Also, Isabella can be very persuasive when she's calling in favors. I told you my family owed you a debt, Isabella said. This is part of how we pay it. You wanted to be a doctor. Now you can be. On your terms, serving the communities that need you most. It was exactly what Evelyn had wanted a year ago, the chance to finish her degree, to practice medicine, to help people through legitimate channels. But a year ago, she'd been invisible, running from debt collectors, convinced that visibility meant vulnerability. Now she stood in a room full of criminals who'd become allies, being offered opportunities she'd thought were gone forever, with the power to make real change in communities abandoned by everyone else. I need to think about it, she said finally. Of course. Take your time. Dr. Vasquez handed her his card. But not too much time. We start the next cohort in 2 months. After he walked away, Isabella touched her arm gently. You've done remarkable work, Evelyn. You've proven that compassion and pragmatism aren't opposites. That's rare. Don't waste it by second-guessing yourself. The celebration continued around her. Evelyn found a quiet corner, watching criminals toast to peace, to prosperity, to the accord that had transformed Phoenix from a war zone into something more functional. It wasn't perfect. Violence still happened, crimes were still committed, people still suffered. But it was better. Measurably, quantifiably better than it had been. And she'd helped make that happen. Adrian found her eventually. You're hiding. I'm observing. There's a difference. You're thinking about the offer. Whether to accept it, whether it's legitimate, whether you're selling out by working with a program funded partially by cartel money. You know me too well. I know you're brilliant at helping people and terrible at accepting that you deserve good things. He sat beside her. What Patricia said to you about there being no difference between what she did and what we do, you've been thinking about that. Haven't you? Every day. But I've decided she's wrong. There is a difference. Intention matters, outcome matters. The choice to keep trying to be better matters. She wanted destruction. We're building something. That counts. Even if what we're building is just a more efficient criminal enterprise, we're building a system that protects people instead of destroying them, that reduces harm instead of causing it. Is it perfect? No. Is it legal? Not remotely. But it's better than what existed before, and that's worth something. He paused. You saved my life. Then you saved this city by giving us a way to stop killing each other. Don't diminish that because it doesn't fit some ideal vision of what helping should look like. Evelyn thought about the clinic, about the patients she'd treated, about the violence that hadn't happened because organizations were following accord rules instead of defaulting to war. She thought about Patricia's sister, about her own father, about all the people destroyed by systems that didn't care whether they lived or died. I'm going to accept the residency, she said quietly. And I'm going to keep working with the accord. And I'm going to live with the contradiction of being a doctor who takes money from criminals because that's the only way to reach the people who need help most. That's not contradiction, that's pragmatism. It's compromise. Everything about this is compromise. My ethics, my principles, my idea of what being a good person means. I've compromised all of it. No, you've adapted it. There's a difference. Adrian shifted to face her directly. You could have stayed invisible. Could have kept hiding, kept running, kept choosing safety over engagement. Instead, you spoke up, saved lives, built something meaningful out of chaos. That's not compromise, that's courage. It doesn't feel courageous. It feels like I'm making peace with things I shouldn't accept. Then don't accept them. Keep pushing, keep demanding better, keep using whatever power you have to improve things. He smiled. That's what you've been doing all along. That's why the Accord works. Because you won't let any of us settle for good enough when we could be better. The words settled something in Evelyn's chest. She'd spent 6 months feeling like she'd betrayed her principles by working with criminals. But maybe that was the wrong way to look at it. Maybe principles weren't rigid absolutes you either upheld perfectly or abandoned completely. Maybe they were guides, ideals you worked toward through whatever imperfect means you had available. She was a doctor who treated gang members, a mediator who negotiated between crime families, a bridge between legitimate society and the underworld, using resources from both to help people failed by each. It was messy and complicated and ethically ambiguous. It was also saving lives. And that had to count for something. I want something in return, she said. From you, from the Accord, from everyone who benefits from what we've built. Name it. More clinics. Not just the one I'm running, a network across Phoenix, staffed by actual medical professionals, funded through the Accord, serving anyone who needs care regardless of their connections or affiliations. She was talking faster now, the idea taking shape. And education programs, job training, support services for people trying to leave gang life. If we're going to reduce violence long-term, we need to give people alternatives. That's expensive. You're saving money by not fighting wars. Redirect it. Invest in the communities you operate in instead of just extracting from them. She looked around the room at representatives from 6 organizations. Make this mean something beyond just peace between criminals. Make it actually improve Phoenix. Adrian's smile was genuine. I'll bring it to the council, but fair warning, they'll probably make you present the proposal yourself. Good. I want them to understand this isn't optional. The Accord survives by proving it's better than what came before. That means actually being better, not just less violent. They talked for another hour, planning, strategizing, imagining what Phoenix could become if they could sustain what they'd started. Other people joined the conversation, Carmen adding ideas about supply chain logistics, Marcus suggesting security protocols for new clinic locations, Sarah volunteering to coordinate staffing. By the time the celebration wound down, they had the outline of a real plan. Not perfect, not comprehensive, but possible. Achievable. The kind of incremental change that actually worked because it built on existing success instead of trying to revolutionize everything at once. Evelyn left the mansion that night feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not naive hope that everything would be perfect, but grounded hope that things could keep getting better. That the work she was doing mattered. That compromise didn't have to mean surrender. The next 2 months were chaos of the best kind. Evelyn enrolled in the residency program, started classes, began splitting her time between hospital rotations and clinic work. She presented the expansion proposal to the Accord Council and watched representatives from organizations that had been trying to kill each other 6 months ago debate the merits of different educational programs and healthcare models. The proposal passed unanimously. Within a week, funding was allocated. Within a month, they'd identified locations for 3 new clinics. Within 2 months, they were hiring staff and stocking supplies and actually making it happen. Phoenix didn't transform overnight. Violence still occurred, crimes were still committed, people still made terrible choices. But the trajectory had changed. Gang-related homicides were down 40% from the previous year. Civilian casualties had dropped even more dramatically. Emergency rooms reported fewer gunshot wounds, fewer overdoses, fewer cases of untreated chronic conditions that had progressed to crisis. The system was working. Imperfectly, incompletely, but working. Evelyn's first day at Phoenix General as an official resident felt surreal. She wore a white coat with her name embroidered on it. Dr. Evelyn Cruz, finally legitimate after all the years of running and hiding and pretending. She treated patients in modern facilities with proper equipment, surrounded by colleagues who had no idea she spent her evenings negotiating between crime families. Her supervising physician was impressed with her trauma skills. You handle pressure well. Most first-year residents panic when things get chaotic. I've had practice, Evelyn said, thinking about talking down a terrorist with a detonator, about treating gunshot wounds in a warehouse clinic, about facilitating negotiations where one wrong word could restart a war. Medical school had been challenging, but it had nothing on the education she'd received in the real world of Phoenix's criminal underworld. 6 months into the residency, Isabella Salazar was admitted to the hospital. Routine surgery, nothing life-threatening, but she'd requested Evelyn as part of her care team. They sat together the night before the operation in a private room that probably cost more per day than most people's rent. "You've done well," Isabella said. "Better than I expected, and my expectations were high. I had good teachers. You, Adrian, even Carmen when she stops trying to recruit me. She'll never stop trying. You're too valuable." Isabella shifted in the hospital bed, looking older than Evelyn had ever seen her. "I wanted to thank you properly. Not just for saving my life that night, but for what you've built since. My grandchildren are growing up in a Phoenix that's safer because of you. It's not just me. It started with you. With your choice to speak up instead of staying silent. Everything else followed from that moment." She paused. "I've spent 40 years in this life. I've seen violence, corruption, suffering. I've caused my share of all three. But what you've done, giving us a way to be better without requiring us to completely abandon who we are, that's revolutionary. It's pragmatic. Revolution often is. The idealists talk about perfect solutions. The pragmatists build imperfect ones that actually work." Isabella smiled. "My daughter thinks I should retire. Let the younger generation take over. She's probably right. Are you going to?" "Eventually. When I'm confident the structure will survive without me." She looked at Evelyn directly. "That's why I want you to take my place on the Accord Council." Evelyn's breath caught. "I can't. I'm not part of your organization." "You're not part of any organization." "That's exactly why you should be on the council. We need someone neutral, someone all parties trust, someone who'll keep pushing us to be better." Isabella's expression was serious. "The Accord works because of you, but it needs to outlast both of us. That requires institutional structures, formal positions, actual accountability. You become my representative. You give the neutrality role legitimacy. I'm a doctor. I'm supposed to be helping patients, not running criminal enterprises. You're already doing both. This just makes it official." She paused. "Think about it. You don't have to decide now, but the offer stands." Evelyn thought about it for weeks. Thought about what it meant to formally join the structure she'd helped create. To give up even the pretense of separation between her legitimate medical work and her criminal mediation. It felt like crossing a line she'd been carefully straddling, like admitting she was part of the system instead of just working within it. She talked to Adrian about it over dinner at the mansion, a regular occurrence now, these strategy sessions disguised as social events. They'd developed a rhythm, a partnership that was professional and personal, and something else she didn't have a name for. "What do you think I should do?" she asked. "I think you should do whatever lets you sleep at night, but I also think you're overthinking this." Adrian refilled her wine glass. "You're already on the council in everything but name. You attend meetings, vote on proposals, have as much influence as any official member. This just acknowledges what's already true." "But it makes it permanent. Makes me complicit in a way I haven't been before. You've been complicit since you accepted my money to run the clinic, since you used cartel resources to treat patients, since you helped negotiate the accord in the first place." He said it gently, without judgment. "You chose this path months ago. Now you're just deciding whether to walk it openly or keep pretending you're somehow separate from it. I wanted to be a doctor, help people, make a difference through legitimate means. You're a doctor. You do help people. You're making more difference than most doctors ever will." Adrian leaned forward. "The question isn't whether you're compromised. We're all compromised. The question is whether your compromise is producing more good than harm. And I think the answer is obvious." Evelyn looked around the mansion that had become something like home, thought about the clinics serving thousands of patients, about the violence that wasn't happening, about the families still intact because organizations had chosen negotiation over war. Thought about herself, no longer invisible, no longer running, finally using her skills to their full potential. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll take Isabella's seat on the council, but I have conditions." "Of course you do. The medical expansion continues. We don't just maintain what we've built, we grow it. More clinics, more services, more investment in the communities we operate in. And we start transitioning some operations toward legitimacy. Find legal revenue streams, phase out the most harmful illegal activities, build something that could eventually operate entirely above board." Adrian was quiet for a moment. "You're asking me to put my organization out of business. I'm asking you to transform it into something sustainable. You said yourself, This life has an expiration date. Violence, prison, death, those are the usual endings. But what if you could build something that outlasts you, that becomes legitimate before you're forced out? She paused. You wanted to be better than your father. This is how. Not by running a kinder criminal empire, but by building an exit strategy that doesn't end in blood. That would take years, maybe decades. So we start now. Make it part of the Accord, a long-term plan for organizations to transition toward legitimate operations. It won't happen overnight, but we create the structure for it to eventually happen. The other organizations will never agree. Then we start with yours. Prove it can work. Let the others follow when they see the benefits. Evelyn met his eyes. You've spent 15 years running this empire. Don't you want to imagine a future where you're not looking over your shoulder constantly, where you can build something you're actually proud of? Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of permission to want something beyond mere survival. If I do this, if we try to build a legitimate exit, I'm going to need help. Someone who understands both worlds, who can navigate the transition. That's why I'm taking the council seat, so I can help push everyone in this direction. Not just you, all of us. Make the Accord about transformation instead of just management. She smiled. Besides, someone has to keep you honest. You've been doing that since the day you saved my life. And I'm not stopping now. They talked until late, planning a future that seemed impossible and necessary in equal measure. Phoenix wouldn't change overnight. The criminal underworld wouldn't disappear because they wished it would, but they could create structures that made change possible, that gave people paths out of violence, that built towards something better even if they never fully reached it. It was compromise. It was pragmatism. It was accepting that perfect solutions didn't exist and imperfect ones were worth fighting for anyway. 2 years after Evelyn spoke up about a bomb and shattered her own invisibility, she stood in front of the Accord Council as its newest official member. Representatives from 6 organizations watched as she was formally sworn in, a ceremony that would have been ridiculous if it wasn't so deadly serious. I accept this position with full awareness of what it means and what it requires, she said, reading from notes she'd written the night before. I commit to serving all organizations fairly while pushing all of us to be better than we are, to reduce harm, protect communities, and build toward a future where violence is choice of last resort rather than first response. Carmen spoke for the Salazar family. We accept your commitment and pledge our support. Adrian spoke for his organization. We recognize your authority and welcome your leadership. The others followed with their own pledges. Formal words for an informal arrangement that had somehow become the governing structure for Phoenix's criminal underworld. Afterward, Adrian found her in the hallway. How does it feel? Terrifying, like I just made myself responsible for whether thousands of people live or die. Welcome to leadership. It doesn't get less terrifying. You just get better at functioning while scared. He paused. I'm proud of you, for what that's worth. It's worth a lot. Evelyn surprised herself by meaning it. Thank you, for trusting me, for giving me a chance to be more than I was. You gave yourself that chance. I just didn't get in the way. They stood there for a moment, 2 people who'd found each other through violence and built something meaningful out of chaos. It wasn't romantic. Their relationship had never gone there, probably never would. But it was partnership, deep and complicated and based on the kind of trust that came from surviving impossible things together. What happens now? Adrian asked. Now we keep working, keep building, keep pushing toward better, even when better seems impossibly far away. Evelyn smiled. Same thing we've been doing all along, just more officially. I can live with that. 3 years after she'd been invisible, Evelyn Cruz was many things. A doctor treating patients at Phoenix General, a clinic director serving underserved communities, a council member mediating between criminal organizations, a voice pushing for transformation where everyone else saw only management. She was imperfect, compromised, ethically complicated. She worked with criminals and took their money and helped them operate more efficiently. She'd made peace with contradictions that would have horrified the person she'd been before her father died, before she ran, before she learned that survival sometimes required accepting imperfect solutions. But she was also saving lives, reducing violence, building structures that made Phoenix safer for everyone, criminals and civilians alike. She was proof that change was possible, even in the darkest corners, that compassion could exist alongside pragmatism, that choosing to help was always better than choosing to hide. The woman no one had noticed had become someone impossible to ignore, not through power or violence or the traditional currencies of the criminal world, but through the simple revolutionary act of consistently trying to make things better. Phoenix was changing. Slowly, imperfectly, with setbacks and compromises and moments of doubt, but it was changing in the right direction, and that was enough. Because the truth Evelyn had learned, the truth she carried with her through hospital rounds and council meetings and late nights planning impossible futures, was simple. Perfect solutions didn't exist. But imperfect people could still choose to do better, could still build something meaningful from broken pieces, could still make a difference, even when the path was complicated and the choices were hard. She'd been invisible once, hiding from violence in silence. Now she stood in the light, using her voice to transform the very systems that had made her invisible in the first place. That was power, real power. Not the kind that came from fear or force, but the kind that came from refusing to accept that things had to stay broken. From seeing what everyone else overlooked and choosing to act on that vision. The housemaid who saved a crime lord's life had become something far more dangerous than anyone expected. She'd become someone who believed change was possible and had the skills to make it happen. Phoenix would never be perfect. Violence would never disappear completely. Criminals would always exist in the shadows and the light. But they would answer to someone now. Someone who'd been invisible long enough to see exactly how the system failed people. Someone who wouldn't accept good enough when better was possible. Someone who'd learned that true power came not from controlling others, but from helping them become better versions of themselves. And in a city built on violence and fear, that was the most revolutionary thing of all.